fighting the dungeon's tier 1 creatures turned out to be the best kind of wake-up call for Corey. It also made him appreciate the old man's help a lot more. He'd assumed tier 1 would feel easy with better stats, gear, and skills. Wrong. Even stronger. He treated them like the earlier monsters, observed, tested, and recorded everything he could. He also finally upgraded his ghost gloves. He fed them every smiley and black smiley soulstone he'd stockpiled from the Door Massacre. The gloves evolved to yellow grade, and the change was wild. Beyond harming ghost-type entities, they now let his hands go incorporeal, phasing through living and non-living things up to tier 3. He could even grab ghostly beings at that tier. For something that dropped from a black smiley, it was absurdly good. Maybe I really married the goddess of luck in a past life, he thought. After testing the library of records, he entered the next room. Fog everywhere, and met the goat skull duelist with twin swords. Level 120, tier 1. He nicknamed it Goaty. In the library, Goaty tore him apart at first. Smarter combat instincts, better speed, flawless use of the fog to mask its presence. Corey died, learned, repeated, until he finally won there, then in reality. The reward shocked him. A legendary skill crystal, full counter. It reflects incoming magical attacks with double power back to the caster or a target of his choice. Goaty had never used it on him, which made sense. Corey hadn't thrown any magic to trigger it. He phased out Goaty's soul stone with the ghost gloves, absorbed it, and jumped to level 90. He also claimed the twin fog swords. Yellow grade, they can generate a controllable heavy fog domain and fire horizontal energy slashes at a cost of 10 mana/second for the fog. Worth carrying even with the ancient spear. He stored Goaty's corpse for later and moved on. He trained full counter to level 2, so it could deflect tier 2 and below magic, though stronger attacks take more effort. Next up in the library was the Quasi-Supreme Nagi, half-snake, 6 arms, level 150, tier 1. The Supreme tag made him suspect All-Father blood nearby, and he was right. The Nagi fought like a fire mage gladiator with ridiculous regeneration. Fireballs, fire whips for weapons plus a shield, one hand free for casting. It outclassed him in raw speed and strength, easily twice his numbers. He survived by chaining focus and spamming full counter against the magic. Battles dragged. His stamina bled out. Every big wound he managed to land sealed up seconds later. Many deaths later, he beat it in the library, then for real. It dropped a single crystal, low regeneration. Passive healing, with the option to spend mana to speed it up. He noticed something important. Wounds from tier 1 enemies healed far slower than injuries from smileys, black smileys, or the environment. He worried what tier 2 or higher damage might mean. With low regeneration learned, some lingering injuries finally closed slowly. He wanted more. Remembering the Nagi's obscene healing, he pushed the skill the hard way. The library wouldn't let him cheese it. Improvements required real-world strain. So he trained it under controlled, painful conditions, accelerating healing with mana each time. It was brutal, and he stayed silent through it, but the skill climbed from LV1, LV10, then evolved into average regeneration. He stopped immediately once the speed felt good enough. All of this happened outside the Nagi's room. Before the regimen, he'd absorbed the Nagi's soul stone, rising from 90, 100, the peak of tier 0. He stored the Nagi's body and its 4 weapons plus shield. They weren't special, and the spear plus fog swords kit was plenty for now. He then scouted the room, which was really a large forest. He left marks to avoid getting lost, and, after an hour with 0 encounters, found an altar holding a bottle with a single drop of golden blood. The urge to drink it hit him like before with the Paragon ancestors' blood, but he held steady. The system asked, pushed really, if he wanted to absorb now, to become tier 1 instantly. It sweetened the pitch, upgrade brand to gold, big stat gains, new skills, a unique physique. Tempting and suspicious. He remembered the old man's warning about golden brands. He declined. The system fell quiet. He stored the bottle in his spatial ring. Then he left the forest and prepared for the dungeon's final guardian. the multiple hands monster. Fighting the next guardian, the one with all the hands, threw Corey completely off. It was the most dangerous fight he had faced, and the first time he could not rely on the library of records the way he had before. He tried to record it from the doorway with his binoculars. What he saw froze him. A little girl. Black, hollow eyes. A small, creepy smile. Dozens of arms jutting from her back like a nest of vipers. The sight alone made his skin crawl, and then she turned her head toward him, as if she could sense him through the door. After a few seconds, she turned away and kept pacing the room, those arms flexing and coiling. He forced down the disgust, sat, and started recording. He named her Little Freak. Days in the library followed. It was both simple and brutal. Simple, because Little Freak had one core ability, those hands. Brutal, because there were 50 of them, each fast, strong, and stubborn to break. Corey died often. To keep up, he had to stay in focus and lean on 4 pillars. Foundation spear techniques, to strip out wasted motion and break hands cleanly. Vibration manipulation, to amplify damage with each stab from the ancient spear. Average regeneration, to keep him in the fight when hands punched through his guard. Lightning movement art, thunder step to burst in once the count was down. At last he cleared her in the library, then in reality. He stepped forward for the loot, and her body turned to ash. Nothing left. Before he could process that, the floor cracked and dropped out. He fell, slammed hard onto something solid, and swore. He looked up, the ruined ceiling above, chunks still falling. He looked around and realized he was in a different room, a house parlor. Cautious sweep. No threats. He climbed back up, tested the remaining floor, and reached the door that led to the dorm. It worked. He could leave. He did not. Curiosity tugged. If there was something outside this house, maybe it mattered. He knew it could be a trap, but he dropped back to the parlor. He was not after treasure. He was simply curious. Curiosity can kill, too. He would learn that the hard way. Without average regeneration, he would have died. Back to the moment. He stood at the front door frowning. Something felt wrong. Maybe danger sense. Maybe the long history of doors making his life worse. He trusted his gut and checked outside with the binoculars. Fog. A wall of it. Thick enough that he could not see beyond a meter. He watched for an hour. No movement. He gripped the ancient spear, eased the door open, and peeked. Still nothing. He stepped out, then paused, thinking about the way back. He did not want another Lost World incident. Then he remembered record, his talent skill. If he mapped his path by sight, he could retrace it in the library later. A built-in backtrack. That was good enough. He moved forward, spear ready. 15 minutes of fog and old buildings. The architecture looked like an older settlement. As he studied it, his hand sizzled. A faint burn, then a quick heal. His other arm did the same. His neck prickled. His clothes began to pit and thin. The fog was corrosive. He turned to head back. A crack sounded underfoot. He had stepped on a skull. He looked around, and his breath caught. Skeletons everywhere. 3 things stood out. Their clothing looked corroded. The street was wrecked, pitted, and slashed as if a battle had torn through. Many skeletons lay beside twin fog swords. Corroded or not, he knew that shape. A sound pulled his gaze up. His heart hammered. He saw it. A thing beyond words. A titanic centipede shape floating in the air, vomiting a stream of dark fog into the distance. It was vast. Corey was an ant beside it. Its legs were human arms and hands. Tumors pulsed along its back, each tumor stamped with faces, human, beast, and things he did not know, groaning and weeping. He could not hear them at first. Then the sound flooded straight into his mind. He clapped his hands over his ears. It did nothing. He looked away, and the noise dulled. Symbols and numbers flickered over his left eye as his appraisal kicked in. Tier 1, Level 199, Demi-Cosmic Fog Devourer. A shrill, whistling screamed through his head. He looked up again. Doors, he muttered, and the god of doors. He blamed them both as the devourer turned its many eyes toward him.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually, I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
After Corey realized that the Titanic abomination above his head had noticed him, he ran at his fastest speed towards the house, which led back to the dormitory. But just as he was running, he felt an intense sensation of danger, and he looked up. His eyes widened uncontrollably when he saw a black fog being emitted at the head of the abomination. Not wanting to test whether the black fog was dangerous or not, he cursed, then ran to the closest building, which was not totally destroyed. Shutting the door as he entered the house, he quickly ran to a room which was nearby, and luckily for him, the room was what he wanted, a bedroom. He looked around and noticed a wardrobe. He quickly ran towards it and entered. Just as he did, he saw a black mist enter the room at an extremely fast speed from the open windows. He shut the wardrobe doors, hoping that it would be able to keep the black mist from entering the wardrobe. He just had a bad feeling about the black mist and didn't want to take his chances with it. Holding the ancient spear tightly, since it brought a degree of safety to him, he looked at the wardrobe door, waiting to see if the black mist would seep in. And surprisingly, after waiting for a few seconds, he was surprised and relieved when no black mist entered the wardrobe. He relaxed slightly, thinking he had some time to think of what to do, but just as he did, the wardrobe tumbled violently, causing Corey to slam into the door, opening in the process. A splashing sound resounded, and Corey shook his head to rid himself of his dazed state. He looked around, and when he did, he was stunned, and his mouth twitched multiple times before he just heaved a tired sigh. He stood, and the splashing sounds resounded once again. He looked down and saw his leg almost knee-deep inside a blue liquid, which he guessed was the stomach acid of the abomination. Yes, Corey was inside the stomach of the demi-cosmic fog devourer. It was absurd thinking about it, but he was swallowed by the monster. But would he panic? No. He had been in way too many dangerous situations for him to panic just because of this. As long as he was alive, and he was not facing a being like the old man or a Tier 2 creature, he would not give up. He looked around trying to figure out his environment before he acted. As he looked around, he saw various rubbles of broken and destroyed buildings and other materials. He even saw the house and wardrobe he hid in, which was now broken into numerous pieces. Not only did he see debris of buildings and various other things, he also saw many bones and corpses of humans, different types of beasts, and also races he had never seen before. As he was observing the houses, bones, and corpses, he noticed that the houses, bones, and corpses were sizzling and melting at a slow rate, which confused him since he didn't feel like his legs, which was in the stomach acid, was melting. But when he looked at his legs, his heart skipped several beats. His legs were actually melting, but as it was melting, it was also healing. But as Corey kept on looking at it, he felt that if he kept on staying in the stomach acid, his average regeneration would eventually not be able to keep up, and his legs would suffer terrible damage. He looked around, then jumped under the nearest debris, which was large enough for him to stand on, and also high enough so that he would not touch the liquid anymore. His mind spun as he kept on looking around. In a few seconds, he looked up and saw an opening. He sighed softly, then jumped from one debris to the other before he got close to the inner skin of the centipede. He climbed up till he reached the opening, and after reaching the opening, he landed on a flat surface and continued climbing up. What was his reason for climbing? He wanted to kill the monster. Corey did not have plans on escaping through the mouth or asshole of the monster, if it had one, since in a way, this was an opportunity for him to kill the monster. There was no way he could fight this monstrosity outside. The demi-cosmic fog devourer was so huge that Corey was literally an ant before it. If he tried to attack the monster with his spear, the damage caused would not even be up to an injury caused by stabbing a toothpick into the skin of a human. So Corey, knowing this was his chance, did not want to waste this opportunity, and so he decided to kill the monster by looking for its heart. He was not sure if the heart was located in the upper part of the monster or the lower part, so he planned on checking the upper part first before checking the lower part, if he didn't find the heart. A few minutes later, Corey, who was hanging like a monkey on a muscle-like material of the demi-cosmic fog devourer, had a deep frown as he looked at the front. In front of him was the same black fog which the demicosmic fog devourer released from its mouth, but there was something different in the black fog. Corey could see so many ghost-like entities in the black fog. They looked like the souls of numerous beings that had been devoured by the abomination. Now, the problem Corey was facing was that he could see in the distance, at least 100 m away from him, a pulsing black heart with purple lines on it, emitting the black fog. Corey's frown deepened, and he wondered if he should continue with his plan of destroying the heart since, well, it seemed impossible with the amount of ghost monsters in front of him. He looked at the heart, then the ghost monsters in front of him for a few seconds before he sighed and gripped the ancient spear tightly. He jumped down from the branch, holding him, and the moment he did, the ghost monsters noticed him. They roared, then charged at him. Corey cranked his neck to the left and right, then ran to the ghost monsters with the ancient spear in his right hand. He decided to fight the ghost monsters because he was worried that if he eventually found a way to escape from the insides of the demicosmic fog devourer, they might notice him and attack him once again, leaving him helpless since Corey truly did not know if there was a way to kill this thing from the outside. In fact, he felt that the only way to kill it was through the inside. Not wanting to depend on luck that the abomination wouldn't notice him if he's able to leave, he decided to attack the heart. So with determination and cold eyes, Corey ran towards the ghost monsters, and when they were within the ancient spear's reach, he performed a sweeping motion which cut the ghost monsters in front of him in half. Corey moved, wanting to kill the next set of ghost monsters, but he stopped, his eyes widened, and he cursed. The ghost monsters he slashed in half became fully healed in a span of 3 seconds, like nothing ever happened to them, like Corey's attack was just an illusion. Corey could not believe his luck as he saw Kyle, Matt, and Mac in a group of at least 20 people in front of the door. He was just thinking of how to find Kyle, so as to have his revenge, but luckily or unluckily for him, the group was directly in front of him. Corey, a feminine voice called out to him, causing him to look over, and the moment he did, his heart skipped a beat. His eyes shook slightly as he saw a beautiful girl wearing glasses. She had black long hair and brown eyes. She was wearing a gray tracksuit, which looked slightly big on her body, though it could not completely hide the curves she had, which was definitely not small, but not large. Becca. Corey subconsciously licked his dry lips as he saw the only girl, or to be more specific, friend who frequently called him to check up on his well-being. None of his other friends called him that much to check up on him. Only Becca did, and for that he was extremely grateful, and even fell in love with her. It was just that he never had the courage to tell her. He was afraid he would get rejected. Corey's eyes widened as he felt Becca's soft body press onto him. Her body hugged him tightly as he felt slightly embarrassed being hugged in public. Oh Lord, her breasts are soft, Corey thought as he hugged Becca back. Although he felt slightly embarrassed being hugged in public, he pushed down his embarrassment and decided to feel the breasts he had always dreamed about. 2 seconds later, much to Corey's disappointment, Becca stopped hugging him. Those breasts were heavenly. With a slightly dazed expression, he had this sad thought. Where have you been, Corey? Are you okay? I want to call you, but my phone got destroyed when the apocalypse happened. What happened to you after the apocalypse happened? A smile crept up on Corey's lips as he saw Becca asking numerous questions nonstop. He was truly touched by the care she had for him. Just as he opened his mouth to answer, a voice interrupted him. Hey man, what's up? He looked away from Becca and looked at the source of the voice. Ayumanox, he exclaimed with surprise. He looked around and saw the remaining members of the Big Five. The founder in his suit and fedora, Zelenus with a shield and sword in his hand, Friedhelm Roxa with a bow strapped behind his back, and, where's the last guy? Corey muttered, then he felt something tap his left shoulder. I'm here. Fuck. Corey cursed and almost swung his fist in reflex, but when he saw Blank looking at him with a bored gaze, he calmed down. When the fuck did you get beside me? Corey asked with shock and slight anger in his tone. I walked here after she came to hug you. I wanted to greet you, so I waited for you to finish speaking with her. Blank replied with a bored gaze and tone, causing Corey's mouth to twitch. So you were beside me throughout? Corey asked, and Blank nodded slowly. What kind of overpowered ability does this guy have? Corey thought and ignored the scary blank blank. Hey man, what are you doing here? Ayumanox asked just as Corey was about to speak. That's what I wanted to ask you guys. Corey replied as he looked at Ayumanox, then Becca. Just as Becca was about to speak, a calm voice resounded in the surroundings. Becca, who is this? Corey turned towards the source of the voice, and when he saw who spoke, his mouth could not close for like 3 seconds. Mrs. Ashley, Becca exclaimed softly, then turned to the woman who was wearing black jean trousers and a red shirt. Her clothes clung to her body, tightly showing off her bountiful assets. Not only were her assets bountiful, she had an extremely beautiful face and a fiery body that could enrapture even the sun and warm the coldest parts of the moon. Well, those were the thoughts that went through the mind of Corey. As for whether those words were true, who knows? You know what they say, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Mrs. Ashley, this is Corey. Corey, you know Mrs. Ashley, right? Corey snapped out of his daze, hearing Becca's question. Yeah, I know her. Why wouldn't I know the most beautiful teacher in our school? Corey replied, while throwing a compliment into his words. He looked at Mrs. Ashley to see her response, but he was slightly disappointed when he saw no change in her expression, which was to be expected since she had heard so many compliments that most of the time it just went through one ear then out the other. He sighed internally, then looked at Becca, wanting to ask questions, but a scoff resounded, causing him to keep his questions. Of course you'll remember her. Haven't you wanked while thinking of her before? Corey's eyes narrowed as he immediately knew who said those words. Even in his sleep, he would recognize that voice. He turned, and with cold eyes and a cold tone, he spoke. Luke, sup bitch? A young, handsome, tall man with blonde hair spoke with contempt in his tone. His eyes had a look of superiority as he looked at Corey. I'm good, Luke, but you must have known that already since you know everything about me. I mean, you even know when I wank. I remember the times you told me you like watching me wank. I miss those good old days. Do you? Corey replied with an indifferent expression, but his tone contained heavy sarcasm and disdain, causing Luke's face to contort in anger and various muffled chuckles to spread out among the group. What did you just say? Luke spoke with a threatening growl, but Corey ignored him. He looked at Becca, who had a small frown on her face with a complicated expression. Corey sighed, internally seeing the frown. There were many reasons why he didn't like Luke despite him being among their group of friends, but the main reason was that Luke was Becca's boyfriend. They had broken up not once, not twice, but thrice. 3 bloody times, and it was all the bastard's fault. All right, all of you should calm down. Just as Luke was on the verge of exploding due to him hearing the chuckles and whispers behind him, Mrs. Ashley spoke out loud, calming the rising tension. She looked at Corey with a small frown, which marred her extremely beautiful face. Corey wished to wash that frown away from the heavenly fairy's face. So, Corey, right? The heavenly fairy questioned, and Corey nodded with a slightly absent look. Can you tell us why you're here? What were you doing in this dungeon? The heavenly fairy asked, and Corey turned to Kyle, who had been silent the entire time, with a calm and indifferent expression. Corey was sort of confused why Kyle did not try to say anything or do anything ever since he saw him, but Corey could care less. So he replied with a smile. Of course, it's because of my dearest friend Kyle. What do you mean by that? Mrs. Ashley asked with furrowed brows, and Corey shrugged with an indifferent expression. What I mean is that my very good friend there, Kyle, wanted to kill me, so he chased me, and I had to escape into this dungeon. Corey spoke with nonchalant tone, while gesturing towards Kyle, making some to doubt the validity of his words, Mrs. Ashley and Becca being one of them. What are you saying, Corey? Why would Kyle want to kill you? He's your closest friend. Becca questioned with a tone showing she absolutely didn't believe Corey's words. What Becca said is true, young man. You can't just say words like that concerning one of my most important and strongest fighters. There would be consequences. Even Mrs. Ashley defended Kyle and threatened Corey. Corey, undeterred by the fact that most if not all did not believe him since he expected this sort of response, though he was surprised by the words of Mrs. Ashley. If what she said is true, then that means she's the leader of the group and Kyle is her subordinate? Corey thought, then looked at Kyle to see a change in his expression or if he had anything to say in response to Mrs. Ashley's words, but he was slightly surprised when he saw none. Dismissing his thoughts, he looked at Becca first, A slightly pained smile appeared on his face for an instant before it disappeared. Then he looked at Mrs. Ashley, who had a calm expression as he looked at her. Mrs. Ashley. Corey called out, and Mrs. Ashley hummed in response. Was it Kyle that told you about this dungeon? Corey asked while keeping his eyes on Kyle, who still had a calm and indifferent expression. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ashley's brows furrowed once again for a few seconds before she nodded, then spoke. Yes, he was the one. But that doesn't prove anything. Just chill and calm down, I'm not done. Corey shook his head slightly and flashed a smile towards the Heavenly Fairy, but the Heavenly Fairy just had an indifferent expression, causing Corey's mouth to twitch. It must be because I'm not handsome enough. I need to become more handsome. There should be an item that can increase handsomeness, right? After adding, find items or objects that can increase handsomeness to his to-do list, he continued speaking. When he told you about the dungeon, did he say that the dungeon was a way to kill the Tier 2 creature at the Academy Gate? He asked. He didn't say those exact words. What he said was that there was an item in the dungeon that could kill the monster at the gate. Mrs. Ashley spoke, then turned towards Kyle. A hint of doubt slowly appeared in her eyes. Oh, he used an item this time around. Corey muttered not so quietly as he rubbed his chin. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ashley, noticing Corey's choice of words, turned towards Corey. What do you mean by this time around? She asked, and a small smile appeared on Corey's lips, since that was the question he was expecting to be asked. He looked at Kyle, who still had a calm expression on his face. Corey then looked at the cursed chimera and the demi-basilisk, which were behind the entire group. A second later, he looked away, then looked at Mrs. Ashley. Kyle was once the leader of a survivor group, and there was a day he told everybody, including me, that we should go to the security station and use the androids and robots in the security station as a distraction when fighting the Tier 2 monster. He paused, and a smile appeared on his face. Do you know what eventually happened? Corey asked, then cranked his neck and pressed his fingers, causing a soft crack to resound in the now silent surroundings. That felt good. My fingers were stiff as fuck, Corey thought as he shook his hand slightly. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ashley, whose face was now a bit dark after thinking for a few seconds, spoke. They're dead, right? Corey looked at her with slight surprise, then he nodded. Yeah, you're right. They're all dead. Kyle's 2 pets there did it. Corey spoke, then pointed, but who are you calling a pet, you fucker? Corey turned towards the source of the voice, then looked at his pointed finger. Oops, a mistake, he said with an apologetic expression as he looked Matt and Mac, which his finger was still pointing at. Muffled chuckles escaped from the group, seeing that since anybody with discerning eyes could see that Corey was anything but apologetic and did that on purpose. Asterisk cough, asterisk cough. So I actually meant those 2 monsters. Coughing to garner everyone's attention, he pointed at the cursed chimera and demi-basilisk. Everyone turned towards the demi-basilisk and the cursed chimera with suspicious and cautious eyes. Previously, the 2 monsters were everyone's source of confidence in conquering the extremely dangerous dungeon in front of them, but now, they seemed like the Grim Reaper brothers. Kyle, do you have anything to say? Are Corey's words true? Mrs. Ashley, seeing Kyle, not denying any of Corey's words, asked with slightly cold eyes, causing everybody to look at Kyle with varying expressions. Ha ha ha. A soft chuckle escaped Kyle's lips before it erupted into a full-blown laughter. Lord, oh Lord, you're so good at being a clown, Zane. With a cold and indifferent tone and expression, Kyle spoke, causing everybody to think that maybe all of Corey's words were lies. Oh, shut up, Kyle. Do you want to say I was lying? Corey spoke as he rolled his eyes with a nonchalant expression. Meanwhile, a small smile formed on Kyle's lips hearing Corey's words. He pushed up his glasses, then spoke. Well, of course you're right, Zane. I killed all of them. All the survivors I gathered, I killed all of them. Murmurs rang out from everybody hearing Kyle admit to Corey's words. Some had disbelieving expressions, some had cold expressions, and some brought out their weapons. Meanwhile, Corey was not surprised hearing Kyle admit the truth. Ever since the apocalypse started, Kyle had become more arrogant. In fact, he had become so arrogant to the point that he made some foolish decisions in Corey's eyes. Why? Corey turned towards Mrs. Ashley, who spoke and had a slightly regretful expression. Kyle turned towards her, and with an indifferent expression, he spoke. Do I need to explain myself to a dead person? Mrs. Ashley's eyes became frigid cold, and Corey could see heat waves around her. The heavenly fairy is mad, Corey thought with a sad expression. Then he looked at Kyle, the perpetrator, with cold eyes. I'm curious about something, Kyle. Corey spoke, and Kyle tilted his head. Why didn't you try to defend yourself? Corey asked, since he was truly curious. He actually expected Kyle to defend himself, no matter how little, but surprisingly, he did not. Is he so prideful to the point that he sees it beneath him to defend himself? Corey thought with furrowed brows. Meanwhile, Kyle had a confused expression on his face hearing Corey's question. Why do I need to defend myself? He asked. Corey was confused. You all are weak. Why do I need to defend myself? Kyle said, and everybody's eyes became cold, and the tension in the air rose to the point that the air became hot. Wait, Corey thought, then turned towards Mrs. Ashley, who now had flames on her body. Oh, it's not the tension that made the air to become hot. It's the heavenly fairy. Corey thought, then he heard Kyle speak with a calm expression. Well, if you want a valid reason on why I didn't try to defend myself, it's because there's no point. Kyle paused, then gestured towards the group before gesturing at the flaming heavenly fairy at the end. All of them would become suspicious of me, even if I defended myself successfully and they believed me. No matter how little their suspicions may be, they would still be suspicious of me, and that's not what I want. So instead of wasting my time having to watch my back, I'd rather kill them now. Kyle thought, and Corey had a slightly stunned expression. That's actually sensible. He spoke with a surprised and confused tone. How come I didn't think of that? Despite Corey's thoughts, Kyle spoke once more. You know you're really a bastard, Zane. This is the second time you've almost stopped my plan. Corey, hearing Kyle's words, looked at him. He saw Kyle raise his right hand. This time, I'll make sure I kill you, Kyle said, then snapped his fingers. Hiss. The moment he did, the demi-basilisk hissed and struck at the nearest group of people close to it. Shit. No, fucker. Exclamations and shouts of curses resounded among the entire group, seeing the monster attacking their comrades at an extremely fast speed. Mrs. Ashley, seeing the demi-basilisk move, was about to unleash a fire attack on it. But before she could move, she paused and her eyes widened with shock as she saw something unbelievable happen in front of her eyes. Bang! No, Kyle, this time around. I'm stopping your plan, and I'll make sure I kill you. As everybody looked at the fallen demi-basilisk, which had a black spear in its head with shock, widened eyes, and open mouths, a calm voice filled with coldness resounded everywhere, causing everybody to look at the source of the voice and the spear. And when they did, everybody had various expressions, but the majority was shock. Mrs. Ashley's eyes flickered as she looked at the slightly short, average teenage boy wearing a yellow hoodie and black track pants. This teenage boy was Corey. In front of the dormitory, a strange scene could be seen. A group of around 20 people stood with their mouths agape as they looked at an unbelievable scene, a scene which they never expected to happen, at least it never happened until they leave their prison and become Tier 1 beings. How? 2 seconds passed, and the silence, which was becoming stifling, was broken by a voice from an extremely shocked blonde male, Luke. His mouth was wide open, and numerous questions appeared in his mind as he looked at the fallen spear-impaled demi-basilisk. His mind could not fathom how somebody like Corey could kill the demi-basilisk with one spear throw. He turned and looked at Corey, who had a somewhat small and lean stature. The guy he had made fun and sometimes bullied now looked incomprehensible to him. He was not the only one who had this thought. Everybody, including Kyle, had shocked expressions, especially when they saw his small stature. Becca's eyes had a strange light in them as she looked at Corey, who now seemed much different from the Corey she knew. He seemed dependable. Just as this thought passed through her mind, she looked at Luke, then she shook her head. I threw a dumbass. Corey replied to Luke's question with a tone of contempt, but Luke was too stunned to make a comeback reply or get angry. Corey looked away from the stunned Luke and looked at the stunned Kyle with a calm expression. His left eye changed, and rapidly changing numbers, letters, and symbols appeared in his pupil. How were you able to kill Ball? How were you able to pierce through Bale's skin? What weapon is that? Kyle, who always had a calm expression, had an expression of shock for the first time. Never in his life did he expect Ball to die by the hands of Zane, especially by a spear throw. How could he pierce through Bale's scales as a tier 0, especially after she was close to maxing out her stats? Is it a skill or the weapon? This thought passed through Kyle's mind as he felt uncomfortable by the way things were progressing. He who always felt like everything was always in his grasp now felt like things were spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, Corey, hearing Kyle's question, looked at Kyle for a second before he looked at the ancient spear. A frown appeared on his face for a few seconds when he remembered he had not given the ancient spear a name. He could not just keep on calling it ancient spears, right? He was silent for a second before his eyes lit up. The weapon is called Smile Reaper, Corey said, causing everybody to be stunned, especially Matt, Mac, and Kyle. Didn't you have a dagger you called Smile Reaper? Kyle asked, and Corey nodded. May it and Smile Reaper 2.0 rest in peace. Latum, Corey bowed after speaking, and everybody had strange expressions on their faces hearing Corey's words. In fact, Mrs. Ashley and her subordinates were beginning to wonder if the two of them were actually enemies and not friends, since the two of them had been talking and had not fought at all. Weren't enemies supposed to fight and not talk? This thought went through everybody's mind, but Corey was unbothered by this thought since he wanted to know how powerful Kyle was, and just after he spoke the word Latum, the long-awaited result he was waiting for finally showed up. Rows and columns of words and numbers appeared at the left side of Corey's vision as the fully analyzed data of Kyle was compiled by record, which was always active. Name, Kyle Riggs. Talent, Supreme Magus. Level 100. Basic attributes. Strength, 500. Agility, 500. Dexterity, 500. Constitution, 500. Intelligence, 800. Endurance, 500. Mana, 1,500. Supreme Magus? Supreme? A coincidence. Corey frowned as he looked at Kyle's talent. He then looked at Kyle's basic attributes, and his frown deepened more. Now I guess I know why he would see all of us as weaklings. Corey muttered internally, seeing Kyle's intelligence and mana, which had surpassed the stat limit of normal humans. He was even more surprised seeing Kyle's mana stat, which was the same as his intelligence stat. He could not help but wonder how Kyle's talent increased his mana to such an absurd stat for a tier 0 normal human. Rumble, rumble. Rumbling sounds occurred and the sky darkened. Corey looked up and a stunned expression appeared on Corey's face. What kind of overpowered talent does this bastard have? Corey cursed as he saw streaks of lightning flashing in the dark sky. Rumble. Corey brought out the twin fog swords, then got into a battle stance. Just as he did, he heard the Kyle speak, causing him to look at him. He was slightly surprised for a moment, seeing that the distance between him and Kyle had widened. He moved so fast. Corey thought with a frown. Thank you for allowing me to prepare by talking for so long. You could die now. Kyle spoke while raising his right hand, and a second later, he slashed it down slowly while speaking in a language Corey had never heard but somehow knew what it meant. Aki. Focus. The moment Corey heard that word, which meant fall, he entered his focus state, then looked up, and when he did, his eyes widened slightly as he saw a bolt of lightning just a meter away from him, moving at a fast speed in his focus state. Full counter. Raising one of the twin fog swords up, he used the skill, full counter, and slashed at the bolt of lightning, sending it back to the sky, shocking everybody in the surroundings, especially Kyle. What the fuck? What the fuck? Double exclamations from both Matt and Luke resounded in the area as they both spoke what was exactly on everybody's mind. Although, despite everybody's shock, they all dispersed and moved at least 30 m away from Corey and Kyle, not wanting to be collateral damage in the upcoming battle. How did you do that? What abominable skill is that? Kyle shouted with an expression containing frustration, anger, shock, and desire. Do I need to explain myself to a dead person? Returning Kyle's words back to himself, Corey felt a sense of satisfaction as a smile crept up on his face. Meanwhile, Kyle had a stunned expression on his face for a second before it became entirely indifferent. Tremor, not bothering to reply Corey's words, Kyle unleashed another skill of his and stomped on the floor, causing the ground that was 50 m around to tremble intensely. Shit, Corey cursed as he struggled to keep his footing and not fall. Fireball. Lightning bolt. Corey's eyes widened when he saw 3 fireballs and 2 lightning bolts coming towards him. He forcefully regained his balance, seeing the attacks coming towards him, and the moment he did, 2 fireballs came towards him. Full counter. Using full counter once again, he swung both of the twin fog swords, sending back the 2 fireballs to Kyle, but he saw a wall rise up from the ground, blocking the attacks. He clicked his tongue, then used full counter once again on the 3rd fireball. The 2 lightning bolts came towards him after he sent back the fireballs, and he swung both his swords while using full counter, sending one of the lightning bolt back at Kyle. Wait. 1. Corey's eyes widened with shock when he saw the 2nd bolt of lightning he slashed at dissipate like mist. An illusion? Corey thought with widened eyes, then he saw another bolt of lightning appear at the exact spot where he just slashed at the fake lightning bolt. There was no way he could use full counter on it. He had lost his balance. Sure dash. Corey cursed, but bang. The bolt of lightning struck Corey, causing everybody that was watching to think Corey was done for. But, fucking bastard, you ruined my hoodie. Everybody looked at the spot Corey was in with surprise. The smoke caused between the 2 teenagers' fight magically disappeared the instant everybody looked at Corey's position. But when they did, everybody had various expressions, with the majority being curiosity. Corey coughed once more while dusting off the dust on his body. As he dusted his body, he could not help but sigh. This was why I didn't want to use thing every time. It's too cool. Corey muttered as he looked at the Devourer's armor, which had automatically appeared on his body after it sensed that he was about to get hurt. This thing actually reduced the damage I took by half. Corey muttered as he looked at the Devourer's armor, which looked like white ribs of a human covering his entire chest and back. It had a face with 2 closed eyes and a mouth at the center of the ribs, which was at Corey's solar plexus. The Devourer's armor at its current level could reduce the damage taken by Tier 0 attacks, whether physical or magical, by 50%, while for Tier 1 attacks, 25%, and for Tier 2 attacks, 10%. Corey was surprised and pleased when he saw the abilities of the Devourer's armor. The abilities might seem weak in some people's eyes, but one should not forget that Corey was just a Tier 0 human, and if he was an average or even below average Tier 0 human, and he had this armor, he would be invincible in Tier 0, and if he was smart, he could cause problems for Tier 1 individuals. I just knew that you would survive that attack one way or the other. You're just a cockroach. Corey looked up with a confused expression, and just when he did, a familiar feminine scream reached his ears, and he turned his head abruptly. His eyes widened and his heart raced. With his hands outstretched, he could only look as the floor beneath Becca shook and cracked, causing her to lose her balance. Not only that, 3 bolts of lightning shot out towards her. No! With immense panic in his heart, Corey ran. No, he did a mad dash, seeing the 3 lightning bolts zip towards Becca. A slash in. I know this contradicts the last paragraph in the previous chapter, so just ignore it and continue. I'm too tired to change it. Move. Move. Please move. Please fucking move faster. Screaming internally while urging his body to move faster, Corey could only look as he saw the distance between Becca and the 3 lightning bolts reduced to at least a meter. Just a second was all it would take for the 3 lightning bolts to reach Becca and turn her to burnt meat. No. Corey's heart sped up rapidly and his pupils dilated as he could do nothing but watch the end of one of the few people he truly cared about. Becca, who had just regained her balance, was able to see the lightning bolts coming for her life. Surprisingly, she was calm and was not panicking or fearful. Why? She doesn't know. Maybe it's 'cause she knows there was nothing she could do to save her life. She was just a healer who did not have any powerful offensive nor defensive skill. Ever since she joined the survivor group, she had never been in a precarious situation such as this. Is this the end for me? Do I regret asking for the ability to heal people as my wish? This were Becca's last thoughts as the 3 bolts of lightning were now mere centimeters away from her. But just as she had accepted her fate, and just when everybody, including Corey, thought Becca's end was in the next second, like a shining knight coming to the rescue of a damsel in distress, Luke stood in front of Becca, a shield in his hands. Bang, bang, bang. 3 loud bangs resounded as everyone had wide-open eyes as they looked at the scene with various expressions. "El Luke," Becca stuttered as she recognized the back of the knight in front of her. The knight turned towards her, and when Becca saw the bloodied and broken arm of the knight, holding the destroyed shield which saved her life, she quickly placed her hands on top of his injured arm, and a yellow light spread out from her hand under the arm, healing the injuries little by little. "Are you okay?" the knight asked in a caring tone, causing the damsel who was in distress to look up. Seeing the handsome face of the knight, she was slightly dazed for a second before she recovered, and she nodded, showing she was all right. "Good." The knight nodded, then looked at his healing arm for a second before he looked at Kyle. An expression of anger appeared on his face. "How dare you target my main source of stress relief? I've not gotten Ashley yet, so how dare you bloody target her? I'll kill you in the worst possible way, you bastard." Just as Luke had this thought, his eyes widened before it turned into a smirk when he saw what Kyle was doing. "Heh, before I kill you, you should at least kill that bastard first." Meanwhile, Corey, whose eyes had dimmed thinking he was going to lose somebody he genuinely cared about, was rooted on the spot seeing Becca survive. He didn't care if it was Luke that saved her. He didn't care why he saved her. All that mattered to him was that Becca was safe, Becca was alive, somebody he cared about didn't die, and that the monster in him did not have a chance to fully revive in him. He could keep on suppressing and destroying the monster in him slowly. He exhaled, then inhaled heavily as he tried to calm his emotions, his body, and his heart. But the next second he felt his skin tingle in danger, but he was too stunned and not ready to dodge the incoming danger. Bang! 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 Numerous fireballs and lightning bolts hit Corey, causing smoke to rise at the spot he was in. Kyle, who was the perpetrator of all these attacks, raised his right palm up, and then he slammed it down on the floor. Knowing that Corey was a cockroach, he just had a feeling that Corey would survive his previous attacks, so he used another offensive magical attack. Ortis, Blazing Inferno. The moment he spoke both in a foreign and known language, an intense fire rose up from where Corey was located, reaching at least 20 m high. "Corey, shit, what the fuck?" Numerous exclamations of shock, fear, and anxiety rang out from the crowd, watching Kyle's frightening magical attacks. Kyle stood, and without pause, he pointed a finger at the sky. Descent of the lightning sword. The skies rumbled and darkened as the only source of light were the numerous streaks of lightning flashing round in the skies before it formed a giant sword made out of lightning. Shock, despair, and fear appeared on everybody's face as they felt a huge amount of pressure bearing down upon from the sword. Even Mrs. Ashley felt the pressure, since never in her life did she think Kyle was this powerful as a Tier 0 human. How can he unleash such an attack like this without backlash? This is almost a Tier 2 attack. Mrs. Ashley muttered as she looked at the lightning sword in the air with immense shock. While everybody had fear in their eyes, she did not. In her right hand was a palm-sized circular object with lines and symbols on it. She rubbed it a few times, a conflicted expression on her face as she looked at the attack, then at Corey. Meanwhile, Kyle, seeing the lightning sword fully form 3 seconds after he unleashed the skill, swiped his hand down. Aki. Boom. All who were looking at the lightning sword only saw a flash of light before the sword disappeared from their vision, and a loud clap of thunder resounded in the sky and the earth, causing the dark clouds in the sky to dissipate. Full counter! Just when everybody thought Corey's end was near, a shout full of rage shook everybody as, to their immense shock, they saw a bloodied, burnt, and bony Corey holding 2 swords in a cross-like manner on top of his head. The sword of lightning was at the blade of the swords, trying to destroy the swords, but a strange force from the sword was trying to repel it. The twin fog swords and the sword of lightning trembled intensely as both fought to destroy each other. "Rarick!" Corey shouted, and with extreme adrenaline, he pushed past his limits, causing his already damaged body to be more damaged. "Fuck off!" And with a roar, he unleashed his all and sent back the sword made out of lightning back to the sky. Silence. Pin-drop silence permeated the surroundings as everybody, including Kyle and Mrs. Ashley, had expressions of disbelief as they looked at the panting, bloody, charred, and bony figure called Corey. Although he had a somewhat short and lean figure in their eyes, he was no longer a human but a monster. They did not know how a human could remain standing and breathing with Corey's condition. Various parts of his body were burnt, and at some places, one could see the exposed bones of Corey. "Stop! Where do you think you're going?" A shout filled with anger and slight fear resounded in everybody's ears, drawing their attention away from Corey to the arguing duo, Luke and Becca. "Of course I'm going to save him," Becca shouted back with a tone filled with anger, worry, and fear. She looked at Corey and saw him standing still. The only sign that he was alive was the sound of his heavy panting. She tried to run towards him again, but Luke stopped her, much to her annoyance and anger. "Stop! What do you mean, stop? Can't you see he's dying? Do you want to see him die? Stop wasting my time and let me go," Becca shouted back. This time, her tone was filled with immense anger, seeing Luke still holding her arm. She tried to wrestle her arm away from his grip, but she could not. How could a healer like her be stronger than Luke, who invested more in his strength, be compared to her? Not to mention that her physique was weaker than his. "Don't you value your life? What do you think would happen if you joined their fight?" Luke, who was already annoyed and frustrated by the fact that Corey was still alive, albeit barely, was more annoyed seeing Becca repeatedly rushing to help Corey. It made him want to grit his teeth in anger. He could not just tell her that the main reason he didn't want her to help Corey was because he didn't want to see him survive, so he tried to convince her by giving her sensible reasons. After speaking, he looked at Becca and saw that she still had that desire to help Corey, which just made Luke grit his teeth in frustration. "You bitch, you'll suffer for this," Luke viciously thought internally. Then he pointed at Corey. "Look at them. Do you want to die? They're both monsters. If you go, you'll, huh?" Just as Luke was speaking, he turned and looked at Corey, wanted to gesture more, but the moment he did, his eyes bulged with extreme shock as he saw a scene which could only be described as absurd. Becca, who was already very angry at Luke, had a confused expression seeing his shocked expression, and when she looked in his line of vision, her expression was not much different, though there was a little bit of relief deep in her eyes. It was not only Becca and Luke who had shocked expressions. Everyone, including Kyle and Mrs. Ashley, had extremely shocked expressions as they all saw Corey's injury healing at a pace visible to the human eye. Meanwhile, Corey, who was actively using mana to speed up his regeneration, looked at the broken twin fog swords in his hands with an indifferent expression. Then he dropped it on the ground. He clenched his fists repeatedly, and as he was doing that, he heard a voice. "What are you?" Kyle, who was extremely tired and was absorbing mana from the surroundings to refill his almost empty mana core, had an expression of extreme shock as he saw Corey, no, the monster in front of him, heal from the extreme injuries he caused. First, your reaction time is extremely fast for somebody at your level. Your pain tolerance is extremely high. You have an absurd skill which can deflect magical attacks. Now you have extremely fast regenerative abilities? What the fuck are you? Kyle asked with an expression bordering madness, frustration, and anger. Meanwhile, Corey just looked at him with an indifferent expression before he looked at his fist, which he clenched then unclenched. He then looked away from his fist and looked at Kyle, a person whom he almost truly cared for. He closed his eyes for 2 seconds before he opened them back. The indifferent expression was gone, and a cold expression was what appeared on his face. "I'm the person that's going to kill you. I'm the person that's going to kill you." After speaking those words, Corey dashed towards Kyle with an extremely cold expression. "What are you idiots doing? Attack him! Kill him!" Kyle, with an expression of madness and anger, roared at Mac, and the cursed chimera. Matt and Mac, who were shocked by the fact that their boss was more powerful than they expected, and also by the fact that Corey was still alive after all the attacks their boss used on him. Getting out of their dazed state, they immediately ran towards Corey following Kyle's orders, but this time they felt a little bit apprehensive as they moved towards Corey. Corey's previous actions had formed an image of Corey being an immortal monster in their mind. Matt unleashed his great sword as he ran towards Corey. Meanwhile, Mac stayed back after running for at least 10 meters. Meanwhile, the cursed chimera, which was the slowest to react, immediately took to the air and flew towards Corey, overtaking Matt immediately. Corey, who was running, saw the cursed chimera coming towards him. With a calm expression, he spread out his right hand, and 2 seconds later, the camera of illusions appeared in his right hand, and a second later, he pressed the flash button on the camera, causing a flash of white light to illuminate the surroundings for an instant. Meanwhile, the cursed chimera, which was at the forefront of the group of three, bore the brunt of the attack and fell under the illusion of the camera of illusions. Its speed reduced, and its altitude, which was already close to the ground, became much closer. Corey's eyes flashed, seeing the falling chimera. Without reducing his speed, he stretched out his right hand and activated the cursed Dryad's ring. A tree root appeared in front of him, and he controlled the tree root to move and wrap round the body of the chimera. He increased his speed and also controlled the root to bring the chimera towards him. As soon as it was at arm's reach, he grabbed the long root, and with a grunt, he slammed his left foot on the ground, causing it to crack. Then he swung the chimera in a semicircle before he released it with the root. Bang! The cursed chimera crashed into a building, and it stopped moving. Corey, seeing that the cursed chimera was now far away from him, turned, wanted to take care of the remaining bastards who had almost taken his life on numerous occasions. But just as he turned, his eyes constricted slightly when he saw that Matt was extremely close to him with his sword, which had a crimson aura raised above his head. Crimson Dash. Matt tried to call out the attack, but his eyes constricted to needles when he saw Corey disappear before his eyes. Just as his brain was trying to comprehend what was going on, felt an extremely powerful force on his stomach, and his eyes bulged out as his body shook intensely. You're too slow. Also, next time try not to shout out your move unless it needs voice activation before it works. All right. Leaning close to Matt's ears, Corey spoke with an indifferent tone and expression as a slightly vibrating fist was on Matt's stomach, while his other hand was on his back, holding him in place. Matt struggled to look at Corey, and he tried to speak, but he coughed out blood. There. You want to beg for mercy? Stroking his hair softly, Corey asked with a soothing expression, and Matt looked at Corey. His lips were bloodied, but the pleading expression in his eyes was intense and extremely visible. He nodded his head repeatedly to try and convey his answer properly, but anyone watching this could see the intense struggling and pain he went through as he did. Meanwhile, Corey, still stroking his head, nodded his head. No problem. I'll show you mercy. He spoke softly, and Matt had a hopeful expression, but it turned to one of horror when the insides of his body vibrated so much that he trembled violently. If not for Corey holding him in place, he would be thrashing around at the moment. A muffled groan escaped his mouth, but Corey just kept on stroking his head softly with an indifferent expression. 3 seconds later, Matt stopped trembling, but everyone who was watching had various expressions as they saw Matt's condition. Blood was dripping from Matt's mouth, nose, eyes, and ears. An expression of despair and intense pain was frozen on his face. Brother! A scream filled with extreme shock, pain, rage, and hatred shook the entire surroundings, causing everybody except Corey and Kyle to look at the source, Mac. Whoosh! 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 Matt, who had an expression of madness, pain, and regret, continuously shot arrows made out of mana at Corey. Corey just calmly carried Matt's body in front of the incoming mana arrows, causing Matt to look like a porcupine, causing the madness and hatred in Mac's eyes to increase greatly. You bastard! Mac continuously shot more arrows made out of mana, not bothering about the expenditure of his mana, and Corey just placed Matt's body in front of the arrows with an indifferent expression. A few seconds later, Corey's expression changed, and he threw the body forward and dodged to the side. Boom! The moment Matt's body touched a specific incoming mana arrow, it exploded, causing smoke to form in the surroundings. Corey's eyes flashed, and he dashed into the smoke, causing a part of the smoke to dissipate. Mac's eyes widened with shock, seeing Corey's extreme speed. Why are you that fast? He screamed, then shot another mana arrow towards Corey, but Corey dodged it calmly with an indifferent expression. Mac tried to form another mana arrow, but his face contorted in pain the moment he did. No! His eyes widened with fear when he realized that he had expended all his mana. His heart raced, and an extreme, deadly sensation of crisis surged through his entire being when he saw Corey coming towards with an indifferent expression. If I knew, I should have shot the explosive arrows when he was torturing brother. I shouldn't have hesitated. Mac thought with regret as he looked at the incoming god of death with fear. He looked back and seeing Kyle, their leader, sitting in a cross-legged position. The fear in his heart increased. Help me, boss. Please help me. I don't want to die. With each sentence he spoke, his voice rose, showing the extreme fear he was feeling at the moment, but Kyle just looked at Corey with a cold expression, his eyes not even bothering to look at Mac. Boss! Mac shrieked, and a second later, he coughed out blood. He looked down and saw a hand protruding out of the right side of his chest. This is for the hole you gave me in my chest. Leaning his head against Mac's ear, Corey whispered, and those were the last words Mac heard before the light in his eyes dimmed. Corey reactivated the incorporeal ability of the ghost gloves, then pulled out his bloodied hand from Mac's chest, causing Mac's corpse to fall with a bam. Corey ignored the corpse, then looked at Kyle, who was still sitting in a cross-legged position. His brows furrowed slightly when he felt the huge amount of mana around Kyle. What is he doing? Deciding to be careful, Corey decided to observe for a few seconds instead of rushing towards Kyle, where the mana concentration was extremely high. Who knows if it was a trap set up by Kyle? Now it's your turn. He spoke with an indifferent tone and expression and walked step by step towards Kyle. Meanwhile, Kyle, with a cold expression, threw his glasses away. Then he formed a hand sign. No, this time, it's your time to die, Zane. Supreme Art. First Stage Supreme Transformation. Supreme Art. First Stage Supreme Transformation. The moment Kyle spoke, the wind blew intensely as the mana in the surroundings stirred and flowed towards Kyle. Corey covered his eyes so as to prevent the blowing dust and sand from entering his eyes. When he eventually opened his eyes widened when he saw Kyle. Streaks of purple electricity flashed around Kyle's entire body, which had weird lines on it. Not only that, there was a closed vertical eye in his forehead. This form is actually as powerful as the universal system says. And surprisingly, it's just the first stage. Kyle muttered as he clenched his fists repeatedly. Then he looked at his bare, chested body, and a frown appeared on his face. If possible, I need stronger clothes that can withstand the influx and emission of mana from the skill. Kyle muttered, but a second later, he felt the wind in front of his face stir slightly. He frowned, then looked up, but just as he did, bam! A fist landed on his face, which sent him flying and tumbling for at least 10 meters before he came to a stop. Why would you look away from your opponent? Just because you went Super Saiyan. Corey, who had finally satisfied his long-time itch of wanting to punch the face of Kyle, spoke, while shaking his head softly, and just as he did, the sky darkened, then rumbled. Not again. He clicked his tongue, then looked up. Seeing the numerous streaks of lightning up in the sky made him frown. I hope you're satisfied with the punch, cause that would be the last time you hit me. Corey, who was observing the sky, heard Kyle's voice up in the air, and he turned towards him. Seeing Kyle float in the air with numerous streaks of electricity around him and up in the air made him to look like the god of lightning, which was cool. Corey clicked his tongue, seeing the floating Kyle. He was not surprised seeing Kyle float, since he clearly remembered that Kyle floated the time he chased him. He brought out a great sword, which was one of the weapons of the quasi-supreme Nagi, and he rubbed the cursed dryad's ring softly with a glint in his eyes. Aki. A second after he brought out the great sword, Kyle spoke, and a bolt of lightning fell upon Corey. Corey entered his focus state and used True Counter, but this time he sent the lightning bolt towards Kyle. Kyle, with an indifferent expression, just raised his hands up, and a wall of earth rose up from the earth as fast as lightning, blocking the incoming bolt of lightning. Corey's eyes twitched, seeing the absurd speed the wall of earth rose up from the ground. What absurd talent does this guy have? He's fucking overpowered. Just as Corey had this thought, the sky rumbled once more and another bolt of lightning attacked Corey. He sent it towards Kyle once again, but this time he saw that the wall of earth crumbled, but it was still blocked by Kyle, who raised his hand, and a translucent barrier appeared in front of him, blocking the strengthened lightning bolt. Corey's mouth twitched repeatedly, and once again, the sky rumbled and another lightning bolt struck. He sent it towards Kyle again, but his eyes widened when he saw another one just behind the lightning bolt he just sent towards Kyle. Shit. Corey cursed, then tried his best to place the great sword on top of his head. Bang! Corey, he shook violently as lightning ravaged his body. The great sword, which barely blocked the lightning, broke into pieces, and Corey coughed out smoking black blood. Rumble. Come on, give me a fucking break. Wiping off the blood from his lips, Corey actively used mana to heal his internal injuries. He looked at his dominant right arm, which was badly injured, with a frown. Rumble. His face changed as soon as he heard the rumbling in the skies, and without hesitation, he rolled to the side. Bang! A bolt of lightning struck his previous spot, but Corey did not wait to check it out. He ran around with the fastest speed he could muster, dodging the multiple lightning strikes that threatened to take his life. Kyle, seeing Corey dodging the lightning attacks, frowned. "I don't have much time left," Kyle thought, then spread out his arms and spoke. Lightning field. The sky shook and darkened the more. Thunder clapped intensely, causing most watching this fight to tremble slightly, while also covering their ears with fear, horror, and shock in their eyes. This type of power cannot be performed by a Tier 0 human. How? Mrs. Ashley spoke with shock, seeing the sky brightening with multiple bolts of lightning streaking in the dark clouds. Not only was Mrs. Ashley shocked, Corey was absolutely gobsmacked. With wide eyes and open mouth, he stopped running, then a second later, he took in a deep breath, trying to calm his rapidly beating heart. Corey looked at Kyle, who was still spreading his hands up in the air, looking like a god above mortals. Now I know why he was always proud and thought of everybody as weak. He truly had the right to say so, Corey muttered as he looked at Kyle. He then looked behind Kyle with a glint in his eye. It should be ready. Meanwhile, Kyle, this attack should be able to kill him. If it doesn't, then I'll have to retreat. My lightning core is almost empty, and the cracks on it is almost irreversible, Kyle muttered as he looked at the raging lightning field with a frown. When he remembered how Corey forced him to use the supreme art, which should not be used until he reached at least Tier 1, his hatred towards Corey increased, especially when there was a high possibility he could become a cripple if he doesn't deactivate the supreme art. Taking a deep breath, Kyle looked at the lightning field with a solemn expression, and just as he was about to unleash the lightning bolts onto Corey, he felt something around his waist. He looked down, and a frown appeared on his face when he saw a tree root wrapped around his waist. What dash? His sentence was disrupted when the tree root pulled him with a great force, and his eyes widened when he saw the direction he was being pulled to. Corey. Fuck. He cursed when he remembered Corey using this same skill on the cursed chimera. He raised his hand and tried to cut off the root, but just as he did, he heard Corey's voice. Say cheese. What? He looked at Corey with a confused expression, but just as he did, his face changed. Corey, who was holding the camera of illusions, had a smile on his face, seeing Kyle look at him, and without wasting a single second, he pressed the flash button, and the surroundings was illuminated by a white light for an instant before it receded. Corey quickly brought a spear, which was also one of the weapons of the Quasi-Supreme Nagi, and without hesitation, he threw at Kyle. 2 seconds later, Kyle broke out from the illusions, and, just as he did, his pupils constricted. Poochie. Cough. A red spear protruded from the right side of Kyle's chest, making him to cough out blood. With his head hung low and the supreme art deactivated, Kyle was brought before Corey. The raging thunder and lightning had dissipated. The dark sky was gone, causing the light from the sun to brighten and warm up the environment. But Corey's eyes were anything but bright and warm. It was cold and dark, and with a cold tone, he spoke. Why? Why? Kyle, hearing Corey's question, repeated the same word, but his tone contained amusement, then a chuckle escaped his lips. He raised his head, and with a calm and indifferent expression plastered all over his face, he looked at Corey's cold eyes. Are you asking why I did what I did, or are you asking why I killed our friends? With an indifferent tone and expression, Kyle questioned, but Corey had no change in his expression. Both, Corey replied coldly, and a small smile appeared on Kyle's lips. It was a smile containing amusement, pity, and disdain. I did all that I did so as to gain power to kill the Tier 2 monster at the Academy gates. Kyle replied, and Corey's brows furrowed. That doesn't make any sense. There's no evolution center here, so you can't reach Tier 1 no matter how much you try. Corey said, and Kyle looked in a particular direction, causing Corey to raise an eyebrow. If you think you can distract me by trying to look away, then just stop. It won't work. Do you know why I had those 2 monsters as my pets despite me being as strong as I am? Kyle asked while still looking in the distance, ignoring Corey's words. How do you expect me to know? Corey replied, causing Kyle to look at him for a second before he sighed softly. Then he spoke. I had those too, so that I could kill the Tier 2 creature. They were level 101 when I got them, so I made them eat the bodies of everybody that I used so that they could level up. Meanwhile, I used the soul stones to level up and increase my stats. A lot of the things you said don't make any sense. First, where did you even get 2 Tier 1 monsters as pets? Second, how do you expect the 2 Tier 1 creatures to kill the Tier 2 creature at the gate? They're not even that strong. I mean, I was able to defeat them easily, and if I can do that, doesn't that mean I can kill the Tier 2 creature? Also, shouldn't it be that after absorbing the 4th soul stone, you can't gain any more stats? Corey asked, and Kyle raised an eyebrow. A surprised expression appeared on his face, causing Corey to be confused. You don't know? He asked. Know what? Corey asked. I see. Kyle did not reply, but looked down and muttered. 2 seconds later, he looked up. A human can gain stats even after absorbing more than 4 soul stones of other humans. It's the same thing for other races. Corey's pupils constricted hearing Kyle's words, and with a disbelieving expression, he spoke. You mean, a human can decide to continuously kill other humans so that they can continuously increase their stats by absorbing the soul stones? As long as the difference in the level between the soul stone and the human is not greater than 20, then the person would gain at least 1 stat point to one of their attributes. Kyle said, much to Corey's shock. Kyle saw Corey's shocked expression, but he ignored it and continued to speak with a calm and indifferent expression. Why did you think I decided to increase my strength by killing people? Was I a murderer before the apocalypse? Although it sounded like Kyle was defending himself, not a single sign of regret could be seen on his face or even heard in his tone. Couldn't you have found a better way to increase your stats or to gain more power? Corey asked, and Kyle looked at him strangely before chuckling. Are you an idiot, Zane? Tell me, how else do I increase my stats? When we were weak, we could only absorb 4 soul stones of revenants, which were below level 50. There were also dark revenants, but those were below Tier 2, and we could only absorb 4. Also, although there are 5 dungeons in the academy with the dungeon, you just came out from being the most dangerous. Do you know how dangerous it is to go solo in a dungeon? If you now decide to go with a group to kill the monsters in a dungeon, how many soul stones will you be able to absorb to increase your stats and level? Not only that, it's also very difficult for an average person to fight above their levels so that they can increase their stats by a lot after absorbing the soul stone of higher leveled creatures. If somebody decides not to do all that I did, please tell me, how do you expect the person to reach their stat limit so that the person can have a higher chance in killing or escaping the Tier 2 creature? To survive and leave this academy, no, the prison that we are in. Doing what I did is the only way to leave and survive this prison. After Kyle spoke, he coughed out blood, and his expression became a little bit weaker. Meanwhile, Corey was shaken by all he heard from Kyle. He wanted to refute his words and say there was another way, but he could not. All that Kyle said was true. When the apocalypse happened, the monsters they could fight and kill for their levels were the low-leveled Smileys, and it was in fact dangerous for normal students, teachers, and staffs of the academy to kill the low-leveled Smileys since they didn't have prior combat experience. Not only that, they could only gain additional stats from the first 4 soul stones of the Smileys they absorbed. The only way for people to now increase their stats is by using the free attribute points from each level up. If people depended on that, then there was no way they would be able to kill monsters at a higher level than them without much difficulty. Eventually, there would be no way for them to defeat the Tier 2 creature at the academy gate. Zane, just as Corey was lost in thoughts, he heard Kyle call out to him. He looked up and saw Kyle with a pale face. He looked at his left chest, which still had the spear he threw in it. He frowned slightly when he saw that the injury was not healing despite Kyle having maxed out his constitution stat. You don't know what's going outside, Corey. The outside is extremely dangerous. You think what I did was inhumane? You think that me killing our friends and almost everybody in the academy for power was inhumane? Kyle asked, and Corey nodded seriously. Yes. Yes, it was. Cough, cough. Kyle chuckled softly, then, just as he did, he coughed out more blood. Maybe you're right, and maybe you're wrong. You'll know later in the future. Just know this, Corey. You don't know anything about the outside world. It's much more dangerous than you think. Kyle spoke with a solemn tone and expression, but Corey didn't say anything in reply. Kyle sighed softly, then looked down at his chest, where a spear was impaled into. I shouldn't have used the supreme art. Because of my cracked, lightning core, my body can't heal easily. Kyle thought with a solemn expression, then he looked at Corey. You asked me 2 questions previously. The question on how I planned on using those 2 Tier 1 monsters to fight the Tier 2 monster. Well, I planned on taking them into the dungeon you came out from, and after they both kill the monsters in the dungeon, their stats would have increased a lot. But because of you, that's no longer possible. Kyle paused, then exhaled and inhaled painfully. A few seconds passed before he looked at Corey. As for where I got the 2 pets from, I got it from Frodash. Corey frowned as he looked at Kyle, who had a dazed and blank expression. Kyle. Corey called out to him, but there was no answer. Kyle. Corey called out once again, but this time, he shook Kyle lightly, but Kyle did not wake up. He was dead. Corey stood still for some seconds before he sighed. He looked up to the sky, which was beginning to darken, showing that nighttime was near. This is messed up, Corey murmured softly a few seconds after he looked at the sky. Today was the first day he killed a human, but not only that, he killed 3 humans today. He killed one in a brutal manner. He killed the second one with less brutality, and the last person he killed was once his friend. And the worst part of all of this was that Corey felt nothing at the moment. He did not feel sadness, joy, anger, or depression after Kyle died. He just felt indifferent to the events that happened today. HAA. He sighed once again, then looked at Kyle's body, which he had placed on the ground. I'm not sure if you truly died by my hands or by something else, but it doesn't really matter at the moment. I'm going to leave the academy, and I'll show you that it's possible to kill the Tier 2 monster, even if I don't do what you said. Corey muttered. Then he touched the Kyle's corpse and put it inside his spatial ring. Despite them being enemies at the end, they were once friends, and Corey felt he should not just live his corpse out in the open, since he could carry it with him. Step, step, step. He heard sounds of footsteps, and he looked up. We need to talk. Mrs. Ashley stood before him with her hands folded. His eyes went to her breast for a second before he looked away. He got up from his crouching position, dusted his hand, then spoke. Yes, I believe we do. In an unknown place. Where am I? Corey muttered as he looked around with a baffled expression. After his fight against Kyle, he spoke with Mrs. Ashley about a few things, but most of the conversation was centered around how to defeat the Tier 2 creature at the academy gates. Mrs. Ashley was at first worried on how they were to defeat the Tier 2 creature, but after he told her he could find a way to defeat, or at least escape from the creature, she was shocked at first, but then she remembered his absurd abilities and asked how. He just told her he would find a way and it would take some days. After assuring her he would find a way, they spoke about a few things, and let's just say, from their conversation, he could guess that there was more to Mrs. Ashley, and she was definitely not just a normal lecturer. She gave him answers to a few questions which he had, and he was pretty damn sure that those answers would be very expensive to get from a merchant. So it was either she had a lot of coins, or she had a mysterious background. Although he was curious, he didn't ask since it was not his business. After their conversation ended, they both agreed to go back to her hideout where he could rest, and when he got to the hideout, he slept and well. He woke up in this strange place. As Corey looked around this strange place where he was alone, he noticed a few things. First, he was standing on a stagnant ocean that had no end, both horizontally and depth-wise. Second, the source of light in this place was an extremely large orb of light floating high above his head. He looked at the orb for a few seconds before he looked around once again, wondering how the hell he got here and how the hell he was meant to leave this place. Just as he was looking around, he heard an extremely familiar voice from behind him. Hello, Corey. What? Corey turned around abruptly in shock and caution hearing the voice, but the moment he saw the source of the voice, he was absolutely stunned and rooted on the spot. The hell? Corey spoke out loud, subconsciously, when he saw something extremely absurd in front of him. There was another Corey a few meters away from him. This Corey looked exactly like him. Same face, hair, body. No. It even wore the same clothes he was wearing, shocking Corey to his core. The only thing that was different about this thing was that it was on its knees, and around its body were chains which tied it up, and when Corey looked for the source of this chains, he realized that it came from the water beneath him. "What are you?" Corey asked, and the thing in front of him tilted his head slightly. Its face had a confused expression, but Corey could see an amused smile on its lips. "What do you mean? Are you blind?" "Of course I'm you." The thing in front of him spoke calmly, and Corey replied immediately. "Bullshit. How the hell are you me? What the fuck are you, and where the fuck am I?" The thing in front of Corey chuckled a little bit, a smile of derision tugged at his lips. "Like I said, I'm you," it said, and Corey was about to curse at it once again, but when he heard the thing's next words, he shook and his pupils constricted. "I'm the real you, the true you, not the mask you have on right now," the thing said with a small smile on his lips. He then looked up at the orb of light. He tried to stand, but the chains on him stopped him from moving and even pulled him slightly into the water. A tired sigh escaped his lips. Then he looked at Corey, who was still stunned. "As for where you are, who knows? Maybe this is all a dream, or it's just your imagination, or it's somewhere important. I don't know, and neither do you." The true Corey spoke, causing Corey to come out of his stunned state. How what? He had so many questions he wanted to ask, but only those two words could escape his lips, causing the true Corey to chuckle. "How? What?" he asked with a faint grin on his lips. "It's because you can't suppress me anymore. The mask you have on is not going to last. You're finally becoming your true self." The grin on the true Corey's lips widened as he spoke, causing Corey to shake his head repeatedly. No, no, no. I'm tripping. I'm definitely tripping," Corey muttered while rubbing his forehead. "Tripping? No, you're not, Corey. You're very all right. Can't you remember how you tortured the muscle head without feeling any remorse? Can't you remember how you killed your friend and those two buffoons without hesitation? Have you ever tortured somebody before? Have you ever killed a human before? Do you think a normal human could kill another human so easily, even if he or she has killed a lot of smileys? Even if he or she has killed a lot of monsters? You can't suppress me anymore, Corey. I am the real you, the true you. You can't escape from me." The true Corey spoke loudly with a wide smile on his face. He tried to spread out his arms, but the chains restricted him. "Shut the fuck up," Corey muttered while covering his ears. Although he didn't want to hear any of this monster's words, the words of the monster in front of him was still transmitted into his head. "Why are you covering your ears, Corey? Why are you running away from me, Corey? Why are you a coward, Corey?" The true Corey spoke with a small smile, and as he did, the chains around him pulled him into the water little by little. "Shut the fuck up," Corey mumbled once again while covering his ears. "You can't run away from me, Corey. You can't run away from what you truly are. You're an emotionless monster. A monster that cares for no one. A monster that will do what he wants without caring about the opinions of others. A monster that does not care about those who truly care about him. A monster that can watch the world burn without feeling a single thing. A monster that can even kill those who cares about him. You're me. You can't run away from me. Shut the fuck up." Corey roared like a mad beast, hearing the words of the monster in front of him. Bam! He ran towards it, and when he got close to it, a fist landed on its face, causing it to fall to the back. The water rippled and splashed as the monster's body hit it. A chuckle escaped from the monster's bloodied lips. No expression of fear or pain could be seen on its face. Bam! 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 "I'm nothing like you. I'm nothing like you. Do you hear me? I'm nothing like you," Corey roared as he repeatedly slammed his fists on the deformed face of the monster. A few seconds later, he stopped, panting heavily. He thought the monster would at least be dead or would no longer make a sound, but then he heard it chuckle. Corey looked at it with extremely cold eyes. The monster chuckled despite its bloodied and swollen lips. It coughed a little, then cracked a grin at Corey. "You can't run away from me, Corey. You can't," it said, and Corey's eyes flashed. In the next moment, his two hand was on the neck of the monster. "Just shut up and die," Corey spoke, then pushed the monster's head into the water, wanting to drown it to death. He expected the monster to struggle, but it didn't. It just had a calm expression and kept on looking at Corey. A few seconds passed, and Corey saw it mouth some words. His eyes watched the moving lips of the monster, and he could understand its words. "You can't run away from me. I'll be back. Crack." The moment his mind registered those words, he heard a crack, and the next moment he blinked, the environment changed. He looked around with a slightly lost expression, and a few seconds later, he realized he was in the room he chose to sleep in Mrs. Ashley's hideout. He rested his head on the headrest of the bed he was on and looked up. A few seconds later, he covered his face with his hands and sighed. Knock, knock. And just as he did, he heard a knock on the door. He looked at the door with slightly dead and tired eyes for a few seconds, considering if he should answer it, but a few seconds later, the door opened. "Oh, sorry. I thought you were sleeping since you didn't answer." A feminine voice spoke out, and Corey's eyes brightened slightly seeing the person. "Becca, why are you here?" he asked, but then his eyes moved to the tray of food in her hands. "Oh, thanks," he said. "No problem." Becca chuckled softly, then placed a tray on the bedside table. "I hope you're all right. You had terrible injuries in your fight against Kyle," she asked, and Corey nodded his head softly without looking at her. A conflicted expression appeared in his eyes. Meanwhile, Becca, seeing Corey not saying anything, moved to the door. Although she wanted to have a conversation with Corey, she decided to give him some time to rest since he recently killed his former friend. "Well, I guess I'll see you later," she said, and was about to walk through the door, but then she stopped and turned towards Corey. "I heard that you'll be going to the academy gates. Please be safe." She spoke her words softly and with care before turning around to leave, but just as she was about to leave, she heard Corey call out to her. "Becca." She hummed and turned back. "Can we talk?" Corey asked, his eyes containing determination, nervousness, and hope. "Sure." Becca nodded, then sat on the bed, not too close and not too far away from Corey. "What do you want to talk about?" "What do you want to talk about?" Corey, hearing that question, licked his dry lips and gulped subconsciously. His heart, lips, and entire being wanted to speak 3 words, just 3 words which had been in his mind and heart for a very long time. Those 3 words could either make him or break him. It could either bring him immense joy or immense sadness. He inhaled, then exhaled a few times before he forcibly calmed himself down. "Come on, man. You've fought terrifying monsters before, and you're too scared to tell a girl you love her? Man up, motherfucker. It's just saying 3 words. What's the worst that can happen?" Motivating himself internally, Corey suddenly gained the courage, and he looked at Becca, who was still waiting, though Corey could see that she had a slightly worried and nervous expression. "Becca, I have something I want. No, need to tell you," he said, then exhaled softly and opened his lips to speak his heart, but just as he was about to speak, he was interrupted by Becca. "Are you going to tell me you love me?" she asked, and Corey froze, not expecting her to say those words. His mind was blank for a few seconds before he nodded softly. The previous courage he had to confess his love was gone. Only nervousness remained in his rapidly beating heart as he waited for the one-word answer from Becca. Meanwhile, Becca, seeing Corey nod, had a complicated expression on her face. She then looked away from Corey and kept quiet for a few seconds, causing the hope in Corey's heart to diminish by the second. I'm sorry, Corey, but nothing can be between us. I don't love you. I just see you as a friend, a very close friend. I'm sorry, but just let us be friends." Hearing Becca's reply, something shattered in Corey's heart. Her words did not contain malice, nor did it contain disdain. It was even slightly nervous, but it hurt Corey more than anything. "Why? With the way we used to chat and talk over the phone, I thought there was something between us." With his head hung low, he asked. His voice sounded desperate, almost pleading in fact. He needed to know why. They had talked so many times over the phone, and even in real life. Their conversations most of the times were filled with laughter, jokes, speaking extensively about their days and even their future. They had talked so much about their lives that Corey was almost tempted to tell her about his true self. It was just his fear of how she would view him that stopped him from telling her. "There was a time I liked you, but you didn't ask me on time." Becca sighed after speaking, and Corey's pupils shook slightly. "I thought you said you didn't love me. You said you only see me as a friend?" Corey asked with a confused expression while his heart was filled with regret. If he knew. Meanwhile, Becca had a conflicting expression on her face for some seconds before she spoke once more. "I was interested in you at some point in time, and I gave you signals, but you ignored them. It was like you were not interested in me at all at that time, so my interest in you reduced. Corey, hearing Becca's words, had the urge to just curse or do something to release his pent-up frustration in his heart and body. He rubbed his forehead, then his face, and he just shook while heaving a regretful and frustrating sigh. If only he knew. Just as this thought passed through his mind and his heart was filled with regret, he became extremely stunned. No, immensely, in fact. Any word that could quantify something larger than immensely should be used the moment he heard Becca's next words. Also, Luke came back to me and apologized for everything he had done to him. I didn't want to accept it back at first, but he promised he wouldn't do all that he did to me again, and I still love him, so I accepted him back, and now we're dating again. That's the main reason we can't date. I don't want to cheat on Luke. As soon as Becca finished speaking, the room became silent as Corey was stunned for a few seconds before he asked with a very confused expression and tone. Which Luke are you talking about? What do you mean by that? How many Lukes do you know? Becca was confused and asked curiously, not knowing why Corey would ask such a question. You mean the blonde tall bastard that broke your heart not once, not twice, but 3 fucking times? Corey asked as the confusion on his face deepened. He was truly confused if the Luke Becca was talking about was the same bastard he hated. Watch your tone, Corey. Although I value you as a very close friend, that does not mean you can demean my boyfriend like that. If you were my boyfriend also, I'll not allow anybody to speak about you like that. Becca spoke with a threatening tone, causing Corey to raise his brows, shoulders, and hands in a shrugging gesture as he spoke. But I'm not your boyfriend, so don't tell me that. Corey spoke with a snarky tone, startling Becca slightly. Not caring about her reaction or feelings, he continued speaking. Are you all right, by the way? How can you agree to go back to him after all he did to you? How dare you ask me that, Corey? Becca stood with an expression which she would never show Corey on a normal day. It was an expression Corey had never seen before and one which shook his heart slightly. Becca was crying. She had an expression of anger on her face, but with this anger was sadness and a look of betrayal. With the tears streaming down her face, Corey felt an inexplicable feeling in his heart. The feeling was not fake, it was not a mask. It was as real as it got. He felt regret. The reason I even bothered telling you about Luke and I is because I thought you would offer me your support. I thought you were a friend. My other friends ridiculed me when I told them, and I expected you to support me. What kind of friend are you? How the hell do you expect me to support you? To give you my blessings? Are you dumb? Despite the fact that he felt bad making Becca cry, the words she spoke were so anger-inducing that it was almost driving Corey mad. He literally just told her he loved her, but she still wanted him to support her relationship with Luke as a good friend? What was he? A cuck? A fool? Just remembering her words made his blood boil in anger, and when he remembered her past relationships with Luke, his anger reached the peak. You know what? You're stupid. Very stupid, Corey said, and Becca was stunned to stupor. 3 seconds later, she stuttered as she spoke. What did you just call me? I called you a fool. A fucking big fool. With his blood boiling in rage, Corey stood up from the bed and pointed at Becca. On your first relationship with Luke, you guys broke up because your friends found out he cheated on you with somebody else. You didn't want to believe it at first, but when you caught him cheating on you with another girl, you finally believed and broke up with him. Your second relationship. I don't know what made you to go back to him, but you broke up with him because he fucking beat you at one point in time, because he was angry. He fucking beat you. The second time should have made you to realize he was in no way good for you, but you still ended up dating him again. And the third time, the reason you broke up was because you caught him cheating on you with one of your fucking friends. So fucking tell me if you're not stupid for agreeing to date him again. What the fuck is all of this? Are you sure you're mentally alright? Why the fuck do you like toxic relationships? Corey shouted as he poured out all the things in his heart that made him to have so much anger. He was angry. Extremely angry. He cared for Becca, and he definitely did not want to see her get hurt again, especially due to the bastard Luke. But her words, her decisions were so baffling that it caused Corey's rage to reach an extremely high level. Meanwhile, Becca was stunned and slightly scared, seeing the anger on Corey's expression and tone. She never expected Corey to raise his voice at her like this, since he was always gentle towards her. With a quivering and soft tone, she replied to Corey's words, though her words were not filled with confidence. He said he'll change. He said he won't hurt me again. He promised me. He'll never change. People like him never fucking change. How do you expect devils to change? Just stop being fucking stupid and use your damn head. Corey's rage had surpassed his limits as he roared at the top of his voice, hearing the stupid excuse Becca was giving him. He felt like tearing his hair out. If he could knock some sense in her damn head, he would surely give her the biggest, loudest, and hardest knock he could give, and he will sure as hell give her some more, just to be sure she never loses her sense. He exhaled, then inhaled for some seconds, trying to cool his anger. He looked at Becca and saw her trembling, with tears streaming down her face. Corey felt a little bit of guilt and regret seeing her expression, and he wondered if he had gone too far. "Becca, I'm Dash." He moved towards her and stretched out his hands, wanting to touch her and apologize, but, his hand was slapped away forcefully. Becca wiped her tears and looked at Corey with a face filled anger, betrayal, fear, regret, and a whole lot of other expressions which could not be put into words. The room was uncomfortably silent as both of them just stared at each other. Corey, who was beginning to feel more uncomfortable, decided to break the silence. But just as he opened his mouth to speak, Becca spoke. "The reason for me doing all that I did is because of love. I love Luke. I care for him. If I tried to explain it in words, you wouldn't understand, because you've truly never fallen in love with somebody." Corey opened his mouth to speak, but Becca just pushed him aside and walked to the door. She opened it and slammed the door shut, causing a loud bang. Just as she was about to continue walking away, she was startled when she saw somebody in front of her. She looked up, and she spoke up subconsciously. "Mrs. Ashley?" Mrs. Ashley looked at Becca, who had her eyes down. She could see she was trying to keep her tears in. "Go. I'll come and meet you later so that we'll talk. Don't meet anybody else," she said, then moved away, creating a path for Becca to pass through. Becca looked at her for a second, then she bowed her head slightly before walking away, not saying a word. Mrs. Ashley looked at her retreating back for a few seconds before she sighed, then walked to Corey's room and opened the door. She looked around, finding the floor to be littered with some destroyed objects. "What do you want?" She heard Corey's grumpy voice and saw him sitting on the edge of the bed while covering his face with both hands. "I came here because I heard noises, and I also wanted to ask when you plan on going to check out the Tier 2 monster at the gate?" She asked, and Corey, without looking at her or removing his hand from his head, replied, "I'll go when I want to go. Just leave me alone and let me get my shit together." Mrs. Ashley did not reply for a few seconds as she looked at Corey. A contemplative light appeared in her eyes before she shook her head and walked towards the door. "You should apologize to her when she has calmed down," she advised, then walked out of the room. A few seconds later, Corey removed his hands from his face and looked up. "Why is my life so shitty?" Around 300 meters to the academy gate, a group of around 20 people stood. As they looked at the gate, which was not too far and not too close, they all had solemn and nervous expressions. Mrs. Ashley, who was also among the group, had a solemn expression as she looked at the academy gate. "Corey, you're sure your plan would work, right?" She looked at Corey, who was dressed in all black clothes and shoes. "Yeah, as long as we all do our parts right, it should work," he replied without looking at her. His eyes were on the academy gates. An extremely solemn expression could be seen on his face. "All right, the worst that could happen is that we all die." Mrs. Ashley shrugged, causing Corey to glance at her. "What?" she asked, perceiving Corey's glance. "I never expected you to be so carefree and say those words." His words made a small smile to appear on her lips. "Well, let's just say, I believe that one should try to calm their nerves when going into a battle. I was tense and worried before, but then I remembered that, so I'm trying to calm my nerves. You should too," she advised, and Corey just nodded, then tried to calm his nerves, but no matter how much he tried, he could not. Not when so many people's lives depended on him. When what was just stopping him from reaching his home was a very powerful Tier 2 creature at the academy gate. Clap, clap. A clap resounded in the surroundings, causing Corey and everybody to look at the source, which was Mrs. Ashley. "All right, people, Listen up. As you can see, we're extremely close to leaving this prison, but what is stopping us from leaving is a Tier 2 monster, which is actually very powerful. Now we all know about the plan we've set up with Corey's help. So people, follow the plan if you want to leave this place alive. Follow the plan if you want to kill that monster. Follow the plan if you want to see those you care about. Some of your friends, family members, and those you care about are outside. Even if you don't have anybody you care about outside the academy, you must want to leave this place. So make sure you follow the damn plan and do your best. Also, make sure you don't die. Now let's go. Yay! Corey looked at everybody who was riled up. The previous nervousness on their faces had disappeared. Only determination could be seen in their eyes as they marched towards the gate. She's good at being a leader, Corey thought as he looked at Mrs. Ashley. But his eyes then moved to the members in the group, and a slight frown filled with worry appeared on his face. I hope nothing goes wrong, he thought as he looked at the members of the group, which consisted of mainly females. Corey's main problem in their upcoming fight was the fact that in their group of 28 people, 20 were females while the rest were males, including him. Corey was definitely not a misogynist. It was just that most of the women did not wish for things that would give them fighting ability, for example, Becca. And because of that, the plan was more dangerous. Although the ones that didn't wish for fighting abilities were somewhat weak, some got skills due to the number of monsters they had killed with the group. As for why most of them were females, it was mainly because of the way their school was constructed. The male dormitory was far away from the female dormitory, and Mrs. Ashley's hideout was the female's dormitory, which was not a dungeon. So with the way the school was constructed, there were more females in the female part of the school. Just as Corey was lost in thoughts as he was walking, he felt a glare full of anger, hate, and even killing intent. He looked back and saw Luke glaring at him with eyes full of anger and hatred. Corey looked at him for a few seconds before he ignored him and looked at Becca, who was not too close and not too far away from Luke, a complicated expression in his eyes before he sighed and looked away. He wanted to apologize to Becca, but at the moment, she did not want to meet him at all. Despite the fact that she rejected him, he still cared about her. He didn't love her anymore. He just cared about her like a true friend since throughout his university life, she was always there for him. She never caused him any harm, whether physically or mentally. Okay, maybe except a broken heart. But still, she was a good person that, let's just say, fell in love with the absolutely wrong person. He just wished the bastard won't cause her any more harm. Focus on more important things, Corey. Now's not the time for that. He turned towards Mrs. Ashley, who spoke and nodded his head in response, dispelling all unnecessary thoughts. A few minutes later, the entire group arrived in front of the academy gate, which was now in ruins. An aura that sent shivers down everybody in the group, including Corey, permeated the entire air, causing collective gulps to resound in the surrounding. Corey, with his heart pounding louder than normal, looked at the monster they were meant to fight. A dark gray bird which was at first sleeping peacefully until its eyes fluttered open and its eyes gazed upon the group, causing the hearts of a few to skip a beat. A spark of annoyance, anger, and disdain appeared in its eyes, seeing the group. It slowly stood, allowing the group to see the monster's entire body. Despite Corey having seen it before, his heart still couldn't help but pound intensely seeing the creature. Having a height of at least 10 m, it towered above every member of the survivor group, causing everybody to look up at the creature with sweat dripping from their foreheads. How are we meant to fight that? We're meant to fight that. Shit. Thoughts like this appeared in each of the members' mind as they looked at the creature, which was a bird with dark gray skin. The bird had 3 heads, with each head having different colors of pupils. The left head had fiery red eyes. The right head had bright green eyes, and the central head had extremely black eyes, causing anyone that looked into its eyes to feel a chill from the depths of their souls. Corey's left eyes changed, and rapidly changing numbers, letters, and symbols appeared. Bird of Oblivion, Tier 2, Level 250, extremely weakened. Taking in a deep breath, Corey's left eyes changed back to normal. Ignoring the questions he had several days ago when he saw the information on the Bird of Oblivion, he steeled his mind and looked at the bird with battle intent visible in his eyes. He was close to being able to leave the academy and finally reach his home, reach his family. Nothing, nobody, not even this damn Tier 2 bird was going to stop him from going home. He worked hard so as to finally reach his father, mother, and sister. And there was no damn way he was going to die. He took in a deep breath, and with calm, cold eyes, he spoke. Let's go. Seconds passed as the stare down between the survivor group and the bird of oblivion occurred. 2 seconds later, the central head of the bird of oblivion tilted its head slightly. An expression of intrigue and amusement could be seen in its eyes. Come on, do it. Do it. Gripping the ancient spear tightly, Corey thought as he looked at the left head of the bird. And just as he did, the left head had an expression of irritation and impatience. And in the next second, it spat out a large fireball towards the group, causing Corey's eyes to lit up. Corey, Mrs. Ashley spoke with a slightly worried expression and tone as soon as she saw the immense fireball that would definitely decimate her people if it lands on them or anywhere them and explodes. I got it, Corey replied with a calm expression and tone. His body swayed, and he ran towards the incoming fireball. The moment the fireball was close to him, a glint appeared in his eyes, and he tightened his grip around the ancient spear. His muscles tightened, causing the veins in his lean arms to be exposed, and with a roar he swung the ancient spear like a baseball bat. Full counter! With his teeth clenched, he used all his strength to push back the fireball, which was causing him to feel immense heat and his clothes to catch fire. A battle between him and the fireball occurred, and 2 seconds later, Corey was forced to take a step back, causing the hearts of Mrs. Ashley and the remaining members to tighten in anxiety. The magical attack from a Tier 2 creature was just too powerful for a Tier 0 human like him to send back, despite his full counter being level 2. A/N. Level 2 full counter can send back Tier 2 magical attacks and below. I forgot to mention that in the previous chapters, although it looked like Corey was losing, Corey had a calm look in his eyes. Vibration manipulation. Using the skill vibration manipulation, the large fireball trembled, reducing the pushing force. Corey, with a heavy grunt, planted his right leg forcefully on the ground and shouted, "Back to sender." The fireball flew back towards the bird of oblivion with full force. The speed of the fireball and the fact that something incomprehensible happened in front of their eyes caused the bird to be stunned and unable to react. Boom! The fireball, which was now 2 times more powerful than before, exploded as it came in contact with the bird, stirring up extremely hot winds and smoke. Corey panted without keeping his eyes off the bird, which was not visible due to the heavy smoke around it. His injuries healed passively as time passed, and while it was healing, his eyes moved to the slightly destroyed bird statue, which was in front of the gate and was an important symbol to the university. His eyes moved to the top of the statue, and there he could see a nest. In this nest was a black egg that was at least twice the size of an ostrich egg. I wonder what monster is inside that egg for this Tier 2 monster to be protecting it. Cree! Just as Corey had this thought, a loud scream filled with anger and hatred shook the surroundings. Then a strong gust of wind blew towards the survivors, causing everyone to cover their eyes. A second later, Corey looked up, ignoring the wind, and when he did, his eyes had a strange glint in it. The bird of oblivion, which was high up in the air, had expression of anger and hatred as it looked at the group of survivors, or to be more specific, Corey. Its body was full of injuries, and Corey could see the bare flesh of the bird. First step, injure and anger the big, 3-headed chicken complete. Now, onto the second step. Just as Corey had this thought, he saw the left head, which had the highest expression of hate and anger in its eyes, put his head up, and a reddish-black glow could be seen in its throat. Corey, seeing the actions of the red head, quickly turned to the group behind him. "Ayumanox now. Got it. Go. Sierra," he shouted, and Ayumanox replied back. He waved his hand towards the bird of oblivion, and the cursed chimera flew from behind the group towards the bird. The last 2 heads looked at the cursed chimera with disdain. The green eyes of the right head glowed in a green light, and the wind around it stirred. The bird moved, its motion showing that it wanted to flap its wings at the incoming cursed chimera. "Now, Mrs. Ashley, fire." Corey, seeing the movement of the bird, shouted with urgency, and Mrs. Ashley, without delay, responded. "Archers, mages, fire." She shouted, and the 5 archers and 10 mages in the group released their arrows and magical attacks towards the bird of oblivion. Mrs. Ashley herself spread both of her palms towards the bird, and flames erupted from her palms, reaching the bird. Funny enough, the flames didn't burn the arrows going towards the bird of oblivion. Cree! The right and central head of the bird screamed in anger and looked at the group of survivors down below. Its eyes contained annoyance and immense anger. Meanwhile, Corey ignored the 2 heads of the bird. His eyes observed the left head, whose throat now had a brighter reddish-black glow in it. Shit! He cursed, then turned to the group once again. Buffers! Buff the chimera! Fast! 5 people placed their palms together and spoke different words. Different colors of light appeared on the chimera, causing its speed to drastically increase. In 3 seconds, it reached the bird of oblivion, and in that same span of 3 seconds, the left head of the bird looked down and released a breath full of black flames. And just as the flames were released, the chimera reached the left wing of the bird. The bird, seeing the chimera go for the left wing, tried to move, but the chimera's speed was too fast, and the main controller of the left wing, the left head, was spewing out flames of its mouth. Spurt! Cree! An intense scream of pain from the bird spread out in the surroundings. A hole could be seen in the left wing of the bird, and the cause of this hole was the cursed chimera. Its left hand had pierced into the left wing of the bird, causing extreme pain to the bird of oblivion. With the chimera's left hand inside the left wing of the bird, they both fell from the sky. Despite the fact that the major part of Corey's plan, which was to disable the wings of the bird, was successful, Corey and the group of survivors could not relish in that joy due to the flames coming at them from the sky. Use every defensive and evasive skills you have. Now! Corey roared at the top of his voice, seeing the black flames coming at the group. Using the only defensive move he had, Iron Skin, along with the Devourer's armor, Corey looked at the incoming black fire with a slightly nervous expression. Just as the black fire was a few meters above the group, numerous lights that were barriers, earth walls, mud walls, firewall, water wall, etc. With apprehensions in their hearts, everybody watched as the elemental walls they all set up get destroyed by the black fire, barely lasting 3 seconds. The fear in their hearts increased, and just as the black flames was about to land on the barriers made out of different skills, it swerved to the left abruptly, causing it to sway from the barriers. Although the direction of the flames were no longer at the barriers, a part of it touched some of the barriers, causing those barriers to collapse. Corey released a breath of relief, seeing that his plan was working. Although it was a close call since the chimera didn't reach the bird of oblivion on time, making them to have to defend against its powerful Tier 2 attack. Now for the next pot dash. Whoosh! Bang! A loud bang resounded in the surroundings, disrupting Corey's thoughts. He looked at the source of the loud bang, and when he saw that it was the cursed chimera which had slammed into a building, he was not surprised since he somewhat expected it. His eyes quickly moved away from the chimera, and he looked at the central head of the bird of oblivion with a slightly expectant and nervous eyes. Cree! The 3 heads screamed at the same time. Extreme hate was visible in its eyes, especially the left head. Its red eyes were literally spewing out fire. The bird on its 2 legs stood and looked at every single person in the group. Its 6 eyes lasted much longer on Corey and Mrs. Ashley, especially Corey. Come on, do it quickly, Corey thought, while tightening his grip around the spear. And just as he was getting worried, his eyes lit up when he saw the next actions of the bird. The eyes of the central head shone in an eerily dark light, and right in front of the bird, a small black dot appeared, growing larger by the second. 5 seconds later, an extremely black circular portal appeared in front of the bird. Yes, this is good. With this, the plan is almost complete. Corey, with shining eyes, thought as he looked at the black, swirling portal. He turned back, wanting to give out instructions, but just as he did, an aura that shook him and everyone permeated the surroundings. What? Corey exclaimed, then turned around. The aura shook him to his core, and with extreme shock and with a rapidly beating heart, he looked as the source of the aura stepped out of the portal. with an aura that was not comparable to the Bird of Oblivion's, but was definitely not far from it. Everybody had expressions of dread and shock seeing a Tier 2 creature step out of the portal. The creature had an extremely wide smile on its face as it looked at the group of survivors. Meanwhile, Corey was stunned to stupor, seeing the familiar wide smile. A Tier 2 Smiley had emerged from the portal. After Corey realized that the titanic abomination above his head had noticed him, he ran at his fastest speed towards the house, which led back to the dormitory. But just as he was running, he felt an intense sensation of danger, and he looked up. His eyes widened uncontrollably when he saw a black fog being emitted at the head of the abomination. Not wanting to test whether the black fog was dangerous or not, he cursed, then ran to the closest building, which was not totally destroyed. Shutting the door as he entered the house, he quickly ran to a room which was nearby, and luckily for him, the room was what he wanted, a bedroom. He looked around and noticed a wardrobe. He quickly ran towards it and entered. Just as he did, he saw a black mist enter the room at an extremely fast speed from the open windows. He shut the wardrobe doors, hoping that it would be able to keep the black mist from entering the wardrobe. He just had a bad feeling about the black mist and didn't want to take his chances with it. Holding the ancient spear tightly, since it brought a degree of safety to him, he looked at the wardrobe door, waiting to see if the black mist would seep in. And surprisingly, after waiting for a few seconds, he was surprised and relieved when no black mist entered the wardrobe. He relaxed slightly, thinking he had some time to think of what to do, but just as he did, the wardrobe tumbled violently, causing Corey to slam into the door, opening in the process. A splashing sound resounded, and Corey shook his head to rid himself of his dazed state. He looked around, and when he did, he was stunned, and his mouth twitched multiple times before he just heaved a tired sigh. He stood, and the splashing sounds resounded once again. He looked down and saw his leg almost knee-deep inside a blue liquid, which he guessed was the stomach acid of the abomination. Yes, Corey was inside the stomach of the demi-cosmic fog devourer. It was absurd thinking about it, but he was swallowed by the monster. But would he panic? No. He had been in way too many dangerous situations for him to panic just because of this. As long as he was alive, and he was not facing a being like the old man or a Tier 2 creature, he would not give up. He looked around trying to figure out his environment before he acted. As he looked around, he saw various rubbles of broken and destroyed buildings and other materials. He even saw the house and wardrobe he hid in, which was now broken into numerous pieces. Not only did he see debris of buildings and various other things, he also saw many bones and corpses of humans, different types of beasts, and also races he had never seen before. As he was observing the houses, bones, and corpses, he noticed that the houses, bones, and corpses were sizzling and melting at a slow rate, which confused him since he didn't feel like his legs, which was in the stomach acid, was melting. But when he looked at his legs, his heart skipped several beats. His legs were actually melting, but as it was melting, it was also healing. But as Corey kept on looking at it, he felt that if he kept on staying in the stomach acid, his average regeneration would eventually not be able to keep up, and his legs would suffer terrible damage. He looked around, then jumped under the nearest debris, which was large enough for him to stand on, and also high enough so that he would not touch the liquid anymore. His mind spun as he kept on looking around. In a few seconds, he looked up and saw an opening. He sighed softly, then jumped from one debris to the other before he got close to the inner skin of the centipede. He climbed up till he reached the opening, and after reaching the opening, he landed on a flat surface and continued climbing up. What was his reason for climbing? He wanted to kill the monster. Corey did not have plans on escaping through the mouth or asshole of the monster, if it had one, since in a way, this was an opportunity for him to kill the monster. There was no way he could fight this monstrosity outside. The demi-cosmic fog devourer was so huge that Corey was literally an ant before it. If he tried to attack the monster with his spear, the damage caused would not even be up to an injury caused by stabbing a toothpick into the skin of a human. So Corey, knowing this was his chance, did not want to waste this opportunity, and so he decided to kill the monster by looking for its heart. He was not sure if the heart was located in the upper part of the monster or the lower part, so he planned on checking the upper part first before checking the lower part, if he didn't find the heart. A few minutes later, Corey, who was hanging like a monkey on a muscle-like material of the demi-cosmic fog devourer, had a deep frown as he looked at the front. In front of him was the same black fog which the demi-cosmic fog devourer released from its mouth, but there was something different in the black fog. Corey could see so many ghost-like entities in the black fog. They looked like the souls of numerous beings that had been devoured by the abomination. Now, the problem Corey was facing was that he could see in the distance, at least 100 m away from him, a pulsing black heart with purple lines on it, emitting the black fog. Corey's frown deepened, and he wondered if he should continue with his plan of destroying the heart since, well, it seemed impossible with the amount of ghost monsters in front of him. He looked at the heart, then the ghost monsters in front of him for a few seconds before he sighed and gripped the ancient spear tightly. He jumped down from the branch, holding him, and the moment he did, the ghost monsters noticed him. They roared, then charged at him. Corey cranked his neck to the left and right, then ran to the ghost monsters with the ancient spear in his right hand. He decided to fight the ghost monsters because he was worried that if he eventually found a way to escape from the insides of the demi-cosmic fog devourer, they might notice him and attack him once again, leaving him helpless since Corey truly did not know if there was a way to kill this thing from the outside. In fact, he felt that the only way to kill it was through the inside. Not wanting to depend on luck that the abomination wouldn't notice him if he's able to leave, he decided to attack the heart. So with determination and cold eyes, Corey ran towards the ghost monsters, and when they were within the ancient spear's reach, he performed a sweeping motion which cut the ghost monsters in front of him in half. Corey moved, wanting to kill the next set of ghost monsters, but he stopped, his eyes widened, and he cursed. The ghost monsters he slashed in half became fully healed in a span of 3 seconds, like nothing ever happened to them, like Corey's attack was just an illusion. A cacophony of roars resounded throughout the entire academy, causing the faces of the entire group and Corey to become extremely pale. What the fuck? Corey turned back and exclaimed as he felt the ground beneath him tremor and the cacophony of roars, grunts, and various other sound from the academy behind them. Corey, what should we do now? Mrs. Ashley asked as she tightened her palm around the circular object in her right hand. Fuck, Corey cursed as his danger sense whistled endlessly in his ears. The tremors he could feel beneath him was increasing by the second, making him wonder just how many monsters, or probably Smileys, was coming at them from the academy. We go with the same plan, Corey shouted with his eyes fixated on the bird of oblivion, which had a look of exhaustion. Can you at least last 1 minute? He asked with a loud voice, drastically reducing the time he had to defeat the bird of oblivion. Normally, he would need at least 5 minutes to kill the bird of oblivion without harming himself. So him reducing it to 1 minute was him putting a lot of pressure on his shoulders. 1 minute is too much. Mrs. Ashley, unaware of how much time Corey actually needed to kill the weakened bird of oblivion, replied without hesitation and with confidence in her tone. The difference in stats between a Tier 0 and Tier 2 is immense. There's no way we can last up to 1 minute. Corey's brows furrowed hearing the words of Mrs. Ashley. If they could not last up to 1 minute, then he didn't know what else to do. There was no way he could face the Tier 2 Smiley on his own and allow Mrs. Ashley and her subordinates to face the bird of oblivion. He would definitely not last up to 1 minute facing the Tier 2 Smiley alone, because he would definitely not be able to keep up with the Tier 2 Smiley, even in his focus state, due to the immense difference in stats. It was after he fought the three-headed chicken countless times in the library of records that he eventually realized the main reason why the old man told him he had 0 chance in defeating a Tier 2 being. Just as Corey was racking his brain on what to do, he heard a familiar voice. I should be able to hold on for a minute against the Tier 2 monster. Corey looked back towards the source of the voice, and when he did, his eyes widened in surprise. The founder. The shock was visible in his tone, but a second later his eyes lit up when he remembered the overpowered ability of the founder. It would strain my body, but if I don't do it, we'll die. The founder with a calm expression spoke. He then pointed at the bird of oblivion. If you kill it, that smiling freak should disappear, right? He asked, and Corey nodded, but then a familiar voice spoke out loud. But what if the Tier 2 monster doesn't disappear after killing the bird? Corey was stunned, then he looked at Becca, who spoke, but her eyes were not on him, but the founder. Meanwhile, the founder felt uncomfortable under the stare of Becca, since he had gotten some gist of what happened between Becca and Corey, but luckily Mrs. Ashley came to his rescue. If that's true, what are we going to do, Corey? Hearing Mrs. Ashley's question, Corey's mind spun on what to do if that was the case. A few seconds later, something clicked in his mind, and with a strange glint in his eyes moved to the egg in the nest on top of the bird statue. If what Becca said is indeed the case, then I'll force the damn three-headed chicken to do something about the Tier 2 smiley. If what Becca said is indeed the case, then I'll force the damn three-headed chicken to do something about the Tier 2 smiley. Three-headed chicken, smiley. Exclamations of confusion spread out from the group, hearing Corey's choice of words, but Corey did not bother to reply nor explain. The founder. Don't worry, Corey shouted, and the founder replied calmly. He snapped his fingers, and with a very pained expression, his body glowed golden. My gold coins! My beautiful gold coins! Lamenting inwardly, the founder forced back the extreme emotional and physical pain he was feeling. Gripping his gun tightly, he looked at the Tier 2 smiley with hatred in his eyes, and with a cold tone, he spoke then shot. Go, Corey! Bang! Corey, who had been waiting for the signal from the founder, saw a golden beam of light shoot out from the muzzle of the founder's gun towards the Tier 2 smiley. The Tier 2 smiley, which did not attack the group despite the order given from the Bird of Oblivion, was stunned seeing an attack coming from the group of puny ants. It could not believe that the group of ants in front of him would dare attack it. Seeing the incoming attack, which was faster than expected, it decided to ignore it since it was coming from a group of puny ants. It looked behind the group and waited for the army of revenants and dark revenants to arrive. It would rather use the army he called forth with his roar than attack the group of puny ants before it. Poochie! Just as it was looking behind the group, he felt pain in its right shoulder, and with a stunned expression, it looked at its right shoulder, which had a bullet-sized hole in it. 2 seconds later, roar! A roar of anger resounded in the surroundings, causing a few to gulp in fear, but Corey's eyes lit up when he saw the limp right arm of the Tier 2 smiley. Smart! He made the right arm of the smiley useless. Corey praised internally, then his eyes moved towards the Bird of Oblivion, which was behind the Tier 2 smiley. Thunderstep. His body swayed. Then a loud thunderclap resounded everywhere, causing everybody to look at Corey, but he was long gone. With every step Corey took, a loud thunderclap spread out in the surroundings. He passed by the Tier 2 smiley, which ignored him and instead ran towards the group. Its anger-filled eyes were on the founder. With cold eyes, Corey looked at the Bird of Oblivion, and when he was around 50 m from the bird, his eyes moved towards the right wing of the Bird of Oblivion, and 2 seconds later, with his left leg placed forward, his right leg placed behind, and the ancient spear in a throwing position. Vibration manipulation. The ancient spear vibrated intensely after Corey activated vibration manipulation, and a second later. Whoosh! The spear whistled through the air, moving towards the Bird of Oblivion at an extremely fast speed. Seeing the incoming spear, disdain appeared in the 6 eyes of the Bird of Oblivion. The green eyes of the right head glowed, and it swung its right wing. A heavy gust of wind blew at the ancient spear, blowing it away. Corey was not surprised seeing this, since he expected that to happen. 3 seconds later, the wind reduced, and Corey dashed into wind. His speed reduced as he struggled slightly against the gust of wind, despite it having reduced in intensity. The main reason he threw the ancient spear was to make the right head use its ability, which was to control wind to a certain extent. A few things he learnt after fighting the Bird of Oblivion in the Library of Records countless times were: 1. After an attack was released from either the right head or left head, the head which released the attack would need to wait for 5 seconds before it can release another attack. 2. The head mainly responsible for attacks was the left head, which released fire attacks. 3. The only ability the central head had was conjuring a portal, and after it did, it became extremely weak to the point that it becomes mostly useless in a battle. The physical strength and agility of the body of the bird also decreases due to the weakness. Although these three were not the only things he learned in the library of records, they were the main, and the third point was the main reason he threw his spear, since he needed the right head to use its wind powers on the ancient spear instead of him. As for why he didn't use the other weapons he had in his inventory instead, you'll find out soon enough. Cree. Just as Corey was getting closer to the bird, the left head, seeing Corey coming towards it, screamed with rage. It opened its mouth and spat out a breath of reddish-black flames at Corey instead of a fireball, learning from its previous mistake where Corey sent back its fireball at it. Corey, seeing the incoming fire breath, stopped running. Then he stretched out his right hand. One of the weapons of the Quasi-Supreme Nagi appeared in his hand, and without hesitation, he threw it at the incoming fire breath. Without looking at the result, he brought out another weapon of the Quasi-Supreme Nagi and threw it in the same direction he threw the previous weapon. He continued doing this until he finished throwing all the offensive weapons of the Quasi-Supreme Nagi in the same direction. With the shield of the Quasi-Supreme Nagi in his hands, he dashed into the fire, which had reduced in intensity due to him throwing all the weapons into the fire. I honestly don't know if this makes sense. 2 seconds later, he dashed out of the fire with a reddened shield and black burnt skin on some parts of his body. With cold eyes, he kept on running towards the bird while actively healing his body. As he was running towards the bird, he noticed the green eyes of the right head glow, and, without hesitation, he flung the shield at the right head. Bam! The shield hit the right head with frightening accuracy, and it became stunned. Corey got to the body of the bird of oblivion, and just as he got to the body, he saw the giant legs of the bird been raised, and without hesitation, he entered his focused state. Bang! He rolled to the right, dodging the leg of the bird of oblivion. He stood, then looked up and saw the left head and the central head wanting to peck at him with their beaks like chickens. Thunder Step. Clap. Using Thunder Step, his speed increased, and he was able to dodge the attacks. Super Jump. Using Super Jump, he jumped onto the body of the bird, and he ran towards the central and left head with Thunder Steps. The heads tried to turn back, but Corey held both their heads and activated the incorporeal ability of the Ghost Gloves. With his incorporeal hands around their brains, and with a cold voice, he spoke. Now listen, you three-headed chicken. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Kill the Tier 2 Smiley, or I'll kill you. Then I'll eventually kill that egg you're protecting. Which would it be? Blackmailing the bird of oblivion could go wrong in so many ways, and in a way, it could be regarded as doing something extremely stupid. The main problem with his plan was the bird understanding his words and intent. Corey had no sure way to make the bird understand his words. So the only thing he could do was make the bird look at the egg while speaking with a cold tone. He just hoped the bird would understand his intent. And if it didn't, then he would kill it and then find a way to kill the Tier 2 Smiley. Meanwhile, the bird of oblivion, which was at first angry at Corey for calling it a three-headed chicken, became stunned when Corey threatened to kill the egg if it doesn't kill the Tier 2 Revenant. Surprisingly, it could understand Corey. Cree. It released a sound, trying to say something, and Corey frowned. How did the bird expect him to understand? He was about to tell the bird to just kill the Tier 2 Smiley, but just as his lips parted open, a surprised expression appeared on his face when he realized he could understand what the bird was trying to say. It was not clear, but it was like he understood the intent of the bird. Is it because of my talent? Corey thought, and his mind went to the wish he made, which was unlimited wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Is this part of the understanding aspect of omniscience? Corey thought, and felt he was probably right. A second later, he shook his head and looked at the bird. You don't believe that I'll allow you to live after you kill the Tier 2 Smiley, and after I kill you, I'll kill the egg? He asked. Cree. The bird replied, while nodding its right head. Corey frowned as he looked at the right head of the bird, which had recovered from its stunned state. He didn't say anything, but the coldness and warning in his eyes showed that if the head tried anything funny, it would become a normal one-headed chicken. It seems you don't understand. You don't have any choice other than to kill the Tier 2 Smiley. If you don't, the egg dies. If you kill the Tier 2 Smiley, I won't kill you and the egg. It's either you believe me or you don't. You have 3 seconds to choose. I don't have all day. Corey spoke in a cold tone while giving an extremely tight deadline. His goal was to pressure the three-headed chicken by not giving it much time to think. If possible, he would prefer it if the three-headed chicken killed or did something about the Tier 2 Smiley, because Becca's words could not be taken for granted. Assuming he killed the three-headed chicken and the Tier 2 Smiley did not disappear and could still stay here and fight them, that would be disastrous for him and the group, because they would have no choice but to escape, and that was even if they could escape from the Tier 2 Smiley. He looked at the group, which was battling the Tier 2 Smiley, and he saw that their situation was getting worse. The founder was the main person attracting aggro from the Tier 2 Smiley, while the others and Mrs. Ashley were supporting the founder. Although there were no deaths, and it looked like they would be able to last for a long period of time, Corey knew they had at most 10 seconds before there would be casualties, especially with the rising dust he could see in the distance behind the gates, which signified the massive horde of monsters coming for them. Knowing he could not waste any more time, he spoke, or to be more accurate, he counted, increasing the pressure on the three-headed chicken. 1. Cree. The bird pleaded for more time, but with cold eyes. Corey continued. 2. Cree. The bird pleaded once again, and its eyes moved towards the egg. Meanwhile, Corey, seeing the bird not acting, made sure his incorporeal hands were around the brain, and he continued. THR-. Cree. Whoosh. The bird screamed in frustration just as Corey was about to finish saying the word. 3. The green eyes of the right head glowed, and the bird swung its right wing at the Tier 2 Smiley, sending it flying away from the group. Cree. With a frustrated expression, the left head spat out a fire breath at the Tier 2 Smiley, which was extremely stunned by the attack from the Bird of Oblivion, which summoned it. A few seconds later, the Tier 2 Smiley died, and Corey exhaled softly, seeing the burnt corpse of the Tier 2 Smiley, but then his eyes looked behind the gates, and he could see that the monsters were still coming towards them even after the death of the Tier 2 Smiley. Do something about the monsters that are coming, he ordered with a cold tone and expression. The bird wanted to argue, but when he saw Corey's expression, it reluctantly acquiesced. Cree. A loud scream erupted from the three heads, causing Corey to instinctively want to remove his hands from the heads of the bird and cover his ears, but him knowing that it would lead to undesirable consequences at the end of the day. He groaned as he tried his best to ignore the pain he was feeling in his ears. 5 seconds later, the sound stopped, and Corey, with bleeding and ringing ears, exhaled softly. He actively used the regeneration skill, and the injury his ear received was gone in 3 seconds. He looked behind the gates, wanting to see the effects of the bird's scream, and a surprised expression appeared on his face when he saw that the dust which was previously coming towards the survivor group was rapidly retreating into the distance. Cree. Hearing the sound made by the Bird of Oblivion, he looked at the right head and saw it looking at him with wary and cold eyes. Don't worry, I'm a man of my word. I keep my promises, he said, but didn't remove his hands from the two heads. He turned towards the survivor group, which had relieved expressions, seeing that their lives were no longer in danger. Mrs. Ashley, Corey called out, and everybody, including Mrs. Ashley and the bird, were stunned and confused. What? Mrs. Ashley asked in a loud voice due to the distance between her and Corey. Please come, Corey said, and Mrs. Ashley had a confused expression. Although she was confused and curious as to why Corey was calling her, she walked towards Corey. Corey, seeing Mrs. Ashley walking towards him, looked at the bird with cold eyes. Don't you dare harm her, and you better allow her to climb you. Cree. His words made the bird frustrated and angry. It wanted to disagree, but when it saw the coldness in Corey's eyes, it knew it would die if it did not agree, so it reluctantly kept quiet and acquiesced. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ashley, who was now standing in front of the Bird of Oblivion, was slightly worried and nervous, since there was no way she would be able to survive an attack from this distance, even with the object in her palm. Let her up. She heard a cold voice from Corey, and when she looked up, she saw the bird drop its right wing in front of her. Climb up, Mrs. Ashley. Hearing the words of Corey, she exhaled softly, then climbed the wing, and she eventually reached Corey. Though when she saw Corey's hands inside the heads of the Bird of Oblivion, a baffled expression appeared on her face. How is it not dead? She questioned with a curious tone. It's a skill of mine, Corey replied, but did not bother to give a detailed explanation, and Mrs. Ashley did not mind. Mrs. Ashley, I called you to ask how to make this three-headed chicken my pet. Corey asked with a serious expression and tone, causing Mrs. Ashley and the Bird of Oblivion to be stunned. Since he could definitely not just let the Bird of Oblivion go scot-free, he had to make it that it could never act against him, and the best way to do that would be to make the Bird of Oblivion his pet. Besides, having a Tier 2 pet for his level was something that would help him a lot now and in the future. Three-headed chicken. Cree. Ashley and the Bird of Oblivion spoke at the same time, and Corey nodded with a serious expression. Cree. Mrs. Ashley chuckled softly. Meanwhile, the Bird of Oblivion screamed in anger, and a murderous expression appeared in its eyes. But when Corey looked at it with a cold expression, the murderous expression receded, but the anger in its eyes was all too clear for anybody to see. If you wanted to be your pet, you just have to tell the universal system that you want it to be your pet, but the bird would have to agree. After she spoke, she looked at the right head of the bird, which had anger in its eyes. Then she looked at Corey with a strange expression. Corey, seeing her expression, was not worried and spoke. Don't worry. There's no way it won't accept, unless it wants to deal with the consequences. As he spoke, he made sure he glanced in the direction of the egg, and the bird, seeing that, felt its anger rise. Meanwhile, the strange expression Mrs. Ashley had increased, seeing the conversation between the Corey and the Bird of Oblivion, but a second later, she shrugged, then spoke. Well, if you want it to be your pet, just know you can only have one pet unless you're a beast tamer. What? Only one pet? Corey exclaimed, hearing the words of Mrs. Ashley. Yes, only one pet, she said, and Corey frowned. If what she said is true, then... The frown on his face increased. Then he glanced at Mrs. Ashley, then the egg in the distance. What of that egg? Is it possible to make the thing inside my pet? Cree. The moment those words left Corey's mouth, a shrill sound escaped the beaks of the bird, and intense killing intent spread out from it, causing cold sweat to appear on Corey and Mrs. Ashley's forehead. Mrs. Ashley was about to instinctively infuse mana into the object in her palm, but just as she was about to infuse mana into the object, Corey spoke. What do you think you're doing? Corey's voice and expression was extremely cold after he calmed himself down from the scare and shock he had when the Bird of Oblivion abruptly released its killing intent. Cree. The Bird of Oblivion, consumed by rage after hearing that a puny ant, a puny mortal human, wanted its queen, its master, to be his pet, momentarily forgot about its situation. Does he know who its queen was? Does he know the power and authority she possessed? Does he know of her origins? Even immortals had to be wary of her and would not dare make her their pet. Just because she was weakened and decided to come to this low-level planet, this mortal thought making its master his pet was all right? Insolence. Cree. The thought of it increased the rage it felt, and just as the bird was about to attack Corey in rage, it shrieked in pain, and an indifferent voice could be heard. I said, "What do you think you're doing?" Corey, with an indifferent expression, spoke. The tip of his fingers, which were at first incorporeal, were now corporeal, and with an indifferent expression, he squeezed the brains of the two heads, causing it to scream in pain once more. It seems you don't understand. With his fingers still squeezing the brains, he spoke indifferently. I can kill two of your heads any time I want, which would weaken you immensely, and there's no way I won't be able to kill the last head. Once I kill you for real, you won't be able to stop me from making that egg my pet or even killing it. So if you know what's good for you, you better keep quiet and don't try anything stupid. The bird shivered, hearing and seeing Corey's tone and expression. As it looked into Corey's indifferent eyes, it shivered the more and wisely kept quiet, but sadness could be seen in its eyes. Wise choice. Not caring about its sad expression, Corey spoke indifferently. Then he looked at Mrs. Ashley. She shivered slightly, seeing his indifferent eyes, which lacked emotions, and Corey, seeing that, blinked repeatedly before his indifferent eyes disappeared. He exhaled, then shook his head softly before he looked at Mrs. Ashley with an apologetic expression. Sorry for scaring you. I was getting annoyed by this three-headed chicken since I've been repeating the same thing to it ever since I got here. But I guess that's why it's a chicken. It can't understand things properly until you threaten it and beat it several times. Hearing the words of Corey, Mrs. Ashley had a strange expression before she just decided not to say anything for the sake of her mental health. You asked if the thing inside the egg can be your pet, right? She asked, and Corey nodded. Well, I don't know much, but from what I know, making baby monsters or beasts your pets is much easier than matured ones. So making the being inside that egg should be simple, I believe. You just need to touch it, and a system notification will pop up in front of you. Disdain appeared in the eyes of the bird of oblivion when it heard the puny mortal human saying that it would be easy for the scary human to make its master into his pet. Spirit devouring bird discovered. Do you want to make it your pet? Seeing the name of the beast in the egg on the translucent screen caused Corey to raise an eyebrow. It sounded cool and ominous, and the thought of him having such a bird as his pet caused him to be excited. Yes, make it my pet. With anticipation in his heart, he replied. Though, the moment he gave his consent, something which he never expected to happen, happened. The egg trembled, and just as Corey was beginning to worry, his eyes went blank, and the surroundings in his vision changed. What? Corey exclaimed with a baffled expression as the change in environment was so abrupt, and when he looked around, his bafflement increased. He was floating in a dark space, and he could see some large round objects in the distance. The more he looked at the round objects, the more he realized that they looked like planets and even burning stars. Holy shit, am I in space? He exclaimed with a shocked expression when he came to the conclusion that there were stars and planets all around him. How the hell did I get here? And if I'm in space, then where is the sun? Corey muttered since he couldn't find the sun in front of him. He looked behind him, but what he saw stunned him. He found the sun of this place, but this sun was not fiery red like how a normal sun was meant to be. Instead, it was like an extremely large ball of whiteness, and there were thick chains all around it. The sun in front of him was strange to Corey, but what truly stunned Corey was the thing in front of the sun. A titanic blackbird with 6 wings and an eerie white mist around its wings floated in front of the sun while flapping its wings. Just as Corey was observing the bird turned its head and looked at him. The moment its gaze landed on Corey, he trembled, and when he blinked, his surroundings changed, and he was back in the academy. Huh, I'm back, Corey mumbled. Then he looked at the black egg in front of him with a confused expression. Did I just make a mistake? Corey mumbled, and just as he did, crack! A crack appeared on the egg, causing Corey to be stunned. Crack, crack, crack. More cracks formed on the egg, and Corey took a step back. The image of the gigantic 6-winged blackbird appeared in his eyes for a second, and he took another step back involuntarily. With slight apprehension, he waited and even got ready for a battle. But when the egg fully cracked and the bird inside appeared in front of him, he was stunned to stupor. Why was I now afraid? Corey muttered when he saw a normal-sized bird appear in front of his eyes. The bird was extremely black and looked like a crow. As he looked at the crow-like bird, it also looked at him, and Corey could see intelligence in its eyes. Not only that, Corey could feel a certain connection between him and the bird. He took a step forward, but just as he did, the bird flapped its wings, and much to Corey's shock, it flew away. Hey, where do you think you're going? Corey shouted and jumped at the bird, wanting to catch it, but as if the bird had eyes at the back of its head, it dodged Corey's hands, causing Corey to fall while cursing. Bam! Fuck! Corey cursed as he landed, and he quickly looked for the bird and chased it. Come here, damn it! Corey cursed as he chased after the bird. There was no way he was going to let the spirit-devouring bird leave after he gave the bird of oblivion to Ashley. That would be a major loss for him. There's no way you're escaping. Corey shouted, and just as he did, a baffled expression appeared on his face when he saw the destination of the bird. The bird flew towards the burnt tier 2 Smiley, and much to Corey's surprise, it cawed, then flapped its wings, and a white mist flowed out of the corpse into the mouth of the bird. It cawed once again, and this time it flew towards Corey. Corey, seeing the bird coming towards him, had an expression of relief. He stretched out his right arm, expecting the bird to stay on it, but much to his shock, it flew to his head and perched there. What do you think you're doing there? Come down here, you damn bird. Corey, with an expression of anger, tried to grab the bird and remove it from its head, but the bird pecked his hand with its sharp beak. Shit, Corey cursed. Then he tried to remove the bird again, but the bird pecked his hand again. You damn bird. Corey cursed while gritting his teeth. He was about to try again, even if it meant he was going to use force. but just as he was about to move his hand, he heard a voice. "It seems you guys are closer than I expected." Corey looked at Ashley, who spoke with a smile of amusement. "How come your own bird went to that different space you talked about, but mine is perching on top of my head? I didn't do anything to it." With annoyance in his tone, he spoke, and Ashley just shrugged and was about to speak. But the moment she opened her lips to speak, the tattoo on her left shoulder shined, and the bird of oblivion appeared. Ashley was stunned, and so was Corey. The bird of oblivion didn't bother with any of the two mortal humans. It had an expression of shock and fear as it looked at the spirit-devouring bird on top of Corey's head. Cree. It glanced at Corey for a few seconds before it bowed its head at the spirit-devouring bird and made a sound. Caw! The spirit-devouring bird replied with an indifferent expression, and the bird of oblivion trembled slightly before it turned into black lights and formed a tattoo on Ashley's left shoulder. Corey had question marks all over his head because he could understand the conversation between the two birds to a certain extent, and he knew that the bird of oblivion was apologizing to the damn bird on top of his head, but the bird on top of his head just replied that it was fine. "You should give her bird a name." He was brought out of his thoughts when he heard the voice of Ashley, and it took him a few seconds to register what she said before his eyes lit up and a name automatically popped into his head. Blackie. Caw. Peck. Ouch. What was that for? Corey rubbed his forehead, which had a slight bump on it, due to the bird pecking it with anger. "She obviously doesn't like it, so change it." Ashley giggled, seeing the aggrieved expression on Corey's face as he rubbed his forehead. "Why won't she dash?" "Wait, she—" Corey, who was at first mumbling, had a look of confusion hearing the gender Ashley gave the bird. "The bird is a she. Mia told me that she's a she and that you must treat her well," Ashley said, causing Corey's confusion to increase. "Your pet is a female, and you named her Mia? Why didn't you name her Three-Headed Chicken or just Chicken?" he asked, and Ashley's lips twitched repeatedly. She consoled Mia repeatedly, who wanted to come out and blast a fire breath at Corey, making sure he turned to ashes. "Just find a better name for your pet," Ashley said, and Corey rubbed his chin for a few seconds before his eyes lit up. "Black. Caw. Peck. Ouch. Damn it. All right, Wingy. Caw. Peck. Fuck. My head. What's wrong with those names? All right, your name is Pest. Caw. Peck. 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 Ouch. 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 Stop it, damn it." Mrs. Ashley's mouth repeatedly twitched, seeing Corey repeatedly suffer from the spirit-devouring bird. "Why don't you just name it Rhea?" Although she was tempted to not help Corey, since it was funny watching him suffer from his pet, she decided to help since she wanted to truly leave the academy and go back to her family. Meanwhile, Corey and the spirit-devouring bird, hearing the words of Ashley, stopped fighting and arguing. They looked at each other, and Corey spoke. "Do you like Rhea?" he asked, but the bird did not reply. She just flew to his head and perched on top of his head, causing Corey's lips to twitch. "Rhea it is then," he said, then looked around, and a relieved light could be seen in his eyes. "I can finally go home," he muttered. "No, we can finally go to our homes." Ashley appeared beside him and spoke softly. Corey looked at her, and she gestured to her subordinates in the distance who were celebrating and discussing happily with each other. Relieved, happy, and joyous expressions could be seen on the faces of most. As he was looking at the expressions of the survivors, his eyes landed on Becca, who, although had a relieved expression, still had a hint of sadness in her eyes. He looked for Luke and saw him talking and laughing with some other guys. He sighed softly, then looked at Ashley. "I have to apologize to Becca. I'll be back," he said, and Ashley nodded without saying a word. Corey exhaled softly, then walked towards Becca. A few seconds later, he stood a few meters away from Becca with his heart beating a little bit faster than normal. "Becca," he called out, and Becca, who was speaking with another female, turned back, and when she did, her pupils shook slightly and her expression changed. She turned back and was about to walk away, but Corey quickly grabbed her by the arm. "Wait, I want to apologize," Corey said, and Becca stopped struggling but didn't face Corey. "Look, I'm sorry for all the things I said back then. It's just that I was really worried for you, and with all the things Luke has done to you, I was worried he would hurt you again, and I didn't want that. You were there for me in my darkest times, and I'm really grateful for that. Even when I avoided everybody and didn't speak to anybody, You called me and always checked up on me. I care about you, Becca. Since you didn't choose me, I won't say I love you, but I still care for you. You're like my best friend, so I'll always care for you, and I'm truly, truly sorry for all that I said back then. I just want you to be happy. Please forgive me. With his hand no longer holding her arm, Corey spoke softly, and he could see Becca tremble slightly. Becca, if you don't want to forgive me, just walk away, and if you forgive me, come and hug me. Corey spoke softly with his arms outstretched and with his heart beating faster than normal. He waited, and much to his surprise, relief and joy, Becca turned back and hugged him with tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry also. I'm sorry. With a muffled voice, Becca spoke, and Corey just rubbed her head with a smile. It's okay, Becca. You don't have to apologize. He spoke in a soothing voice while rubbing Becca's head softly. I missed you. I really did. Ever since the apocalypse started, I was worried about you. Hearing the words spoken by Becca, a smile broke out from Corey's lips, and just as he opened his lips to speak, ring, 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 ring. A sound disrupted him, and with a stunned, confused, and surprised expression, his phone rang. He brought out his phone from his pocket, wondering who would be calling him by this time exactly, ruining the perfect moment he had with Becca. He looked at the caller ID, and the moment he saw the name, his eyes lit up, and an expression filled with happiness appeared on his face. Anna, I was just about to call Dash. He spoke, but his next word was stuck in his throat when he heard the words spoken on the phone. Brother, please help. Mom, Dad, everybody, they're all dead. I cannot defeat them. I could not defeat him. He's too powerful. Please, help. With a strained voice and a voice filled with tears and pain, his sister spoke, and Corey's world came crashing down. Corey stood, frozen in confusion and shock, unable to comprehend what he just heard. A few seconds passed, and Becca, who was still in his arms, stopped hugging him and shook him slightly with a worried expression on her face. She heard all that Anna said since she was extremely close to Corey, and to say she was shocked would be an understatement. Corey. She spoke softly, trying to bring Corey back to reality, and it worked, fortunately or unfortunately. Corey glanced at Becca for a fraction of a second before his mind recalled the words of his sister, and he completely forgot the existence of Becca. Anna, are you still there? Tell me this is all a joke, right? It's one of your jokes, right? Mom and Dad are not dead, right? They're probably in the background, playing along with this prank, right? With each sentence spoken, Corey's heart pounded intensely. His pupils shook uncontrollably, his breathing became unstable, and his mind was an utter mess. Although he asked those questions, he knew from the tone of his sister's earlier words, and the fact that she called him brother instead of Oni-chan meant she was not joking. It meant she was not kidding, and their parents were truly dead. I'm not joking, brother. Everybody is dead. They're all dead. They killed them. He killed them. All of them. Corey's heart squeezed hearing the pain-filled voice from his sister. He could hear her sob with heart-wrenching pain. Anna, who killed them? He asked with a broken and slightly hoarse voice. I don't know who they are. They were wearing dark red robes that had designs of two black axes diagonally joined together all over the robes. They were also wearing plain black masks. They just came out of nowhere and attacked all of us. Corey, please help. Black axes joined together like a cross. Hearing his sister's words, something clicked in Corey's mind as he tried to remember where he had seen something that was familiar with what his sister just described. Anna, where are you? Tell me where you are, and what is your condition? Are you badly injured? Putting aside the description his sister told him, he asked about her condition and location. He needed to know where she was and if she was okay physically. I'm injured, but not too injured. I'm hiding in a building that's not too far from our house. Hearing the words of his sister, he breathed a soft sigh of relief and spoke. Just stay where you are and hide. I'm coming, all right. I'm coming. I'll wait and dash. Boom. Anna. Sis. Anna. Corey screamed and clutched his head with an expression filled with so many emotions when he saw that the call was cut off forcefully. Fuck, fuck. He cursed endlessly while clutching his head. The biggest problem he was facing was how to reach his sister in the fastest time possible. The distance between the academy and the city where his family lived was so far that when using a super fast train, it takes 3 hours to get to City M, which was where their family lived. Now, if using a super-fast train took 3 hours, one could imagine how long it would take Corey to reach his sister if he ran there. He could not run as fast as the train, and there was no vehicle he knew that could move as fast as the train. In fact, even if there was a vehicle that could move that fast, could his sister last that long? God damn it! As all these thoughts ran through his mind, he cursed, and the fear he had in his heart increased exponentially. Is there no way to get there on time? With despair, sadness, and various other emotions in his eyes, he had this thought, but just as he had this thought, he heard a voice. Is your family in danger? He looked at the source, and he was slightly surprised when he realized it was Ashley that spoke. Yes, but they're in City M, and I need to reach my sister quickly. He replied, and without saying anything, Ashley stretched out her hands, which contained 2 items. His ancient spear and a palm-sized circular object. He took both of them, but he had an expression of confusion when he held the palm-sized circular object. Without waiting for Corey to ask, Ashley spoke. That is a teleportation item. Just crush it and imagine where you want to go. It should be able to take you to City M. Hearing her words, Corey's eyes widened and his breathing became hurried. Thank you, he said, and without waiting for her response, he crushed it and his body became blurry before it disappeared entirely. I hope you'll be all right, Ashley muttered as she looked at Corey's previous position. She then turned to look at her subordinates, which had various expressions. We'll be going to City M, so everyone gear up and look for vehicles that are working. Anybody that has a family on our way to City M can meet their families. Also, if your family is in immediate danger, you can leave anytime. So, chop chop people and let's go. Meanwhile, as Corey's form materialized, he felt slightly dizzy due to it being his first time teleporting. 3 seconds later, his dizziness disappeared and he looked around. At first, he didn't recognize where he was due to the environment being so much different than what he remembered. A few seconds later, he realized that he was 2 streets away from his home. He glanced at the once familiar streets, which was now in ruins. Destroyed houses and vehicles, burning houses and vehicles, corpses of both humans and even monsters littered the ground. There were even a few weak monsters walking around. Using 2 seconds to look around, he found the way to his home, and without a second's delay, he sprinted in that direction. Thunderstep, please be alive, Anna. Please be alive. Without hesitation, he used Thunderstep, all the while praying for his sister to still be alive. A minute and some seconds later, Corey reached the street where his home was located. His expression became grim when he saw so many human corpses on the ground and signs of a recent battle everywhere. Shit. He cursed internally and ran to where his home was located. Some seconds later, he reached the location, and when he did, a stunned expression appeared on his face. What the? In front of him was an extremely huge and beautiful mansion. Corey had only seen mansions like this on the internet and T.V shows. Never in his life did he think he would see a beautiful mansion like those in real life. 2 seconds later, Corey got out of his stunned expression and looked around. Where is she? Boom. He mumbled, and just as he was about to take a step so as to look around, he heard a loud sound from afar, and without hesitation, he ran towards the sound. A few minutes later, he got closer to the source of the sound, but when his eyes landed on the source, he stopped running, his pupils shook, and his heart pounded intensely. With fear and shock in his tone, he screamed, Anna!